You may even get tired of winning, and you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
Man, it is like 2025 starting all over again. Something about the beginning of the year, the beginning of a new quarter, the opportunity to set all sorts of trends, and here we go. Boy, howdy, has everything been wild the last couple of days. It's like that Blitzkrieg right after Trump was inaugurated. Everything just went ape. Just massive headline to the left, to the right, all over the place. Just, if you're out in these narrative-following streets, you're just getting pummeled. That's right. There are so many developments happening. We're getting another one of those Lenin weeks, where decades are happening in weeks. Lots and lots of stuff to go through here today. I'm not even gonna pretend. There is no way that this is gonna be a short show. I have accepted that. I have accepted that by the time we get well through this episode, people are gonna be falling off, and you're gonna have to bookmark where you dropped off and come back in. And I couldn't even include everything. It was I did all the stories that I was like, there's no way I can't talk about this. Given everything that we've talked about, there's no way I can't talk about this. I picked those out, and put them into one story, just covering the last 3 days. And I had almost 2 days worth of shows, worth of stories and stuff all put together, sitting in the backlog, waiting to be pulled out. Those got pushed back even further. Anybody who is telling you that nothing is happening, that nothing ever happens, is a lunatic, a wild person. Frankly, I almost understand that as just this is all too much to follow. This is too much to keep track of. I'm just going to say nothing ever happens. And then I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to burden my processors with that. Well, good for you, because I can't not burden my processor with all the things that are happening and what they mean and everything. So total panic and death is what they're saying. Total doomer annihilation. That is the TDA being destroyed today. Besson could almost have his own show. Yeah, Besson could have his own show. Rubio could have his own show. The vice president could have his own show. Stephen Miller could have his own show. And then you've got maybe the second tier people. You've got the maybe Bill Pulte. You've got the Fed chair. So you've got the people who are kind of orbiting around that. You've got Pete Hegseth is probably his own show. Pam Bondi and Kash Patel could collectively be their own show. Just keeping up with everything is a monumental task. I stream for too long, and I don't keep up with everything well enough. So maybe it's because I talk too much. Let's see. So, got a whole bunch of stuff for today, and we are going to announce. Oh, that was the other thing I forgot. I forgot to plug in the iPad here for the soundboard. And I wanted to wait until I got live. So at least if something goes down, if all of a sudden I crash and disappear or something, then just hold on. I'll be back. I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know. All right. There we go. Plugged it in. And it has an active screen share connection with it's like a Bluetooth thing or something for connecting the soundboard app. So this sort of thing, absolutely on Streamlabs, this sort of thing would have crashed it, no question. But it appears as if it is staying up, which is good news. So I assume you guys can still see and hear me. Everything looks like it's still live. Let's try the soundboard. Is it working? Did it all work? Was it all good? Give me the okay, so I know that I'm not streaming into the void here. Donkey Bite says more streaming. People will say no more, and I will say no more. More. Oh, more. Okay, I still look gay. Excellent. Okay, tremendous. Heard no sound. Did the soundboard not come through? Is that not? Let's try another one here. We'll try this one. Oh yeah, it is not. It is not coming through. Okay. Give me just a second here. I think I can fix this. Can anybody hear the sound? No sound. Okay. Hold on. One sec. Let me check the setting here for it. Soundboard. Which one is it called? That one. Okay, yeah, I see why it's not working. So, monitor and output. That's what it needed. Now, it should work. No, still not. Okay. Oh well, no soundboard today. All right, that's fine. Next thing, before we get going here, I need to announce the winner of the drawing. And here it is. We had 26 entrants. Don't worry, I'm not going to actually screen share your email address, but I just want to prove that this is a random drawing. So, random between 1 and 26. There we go, number 14. All right, now I will stop screen sharing and open this to reveal who number 14 is. Number 14 is it has hope in the email address. So if you're listening and you have an email address that has hope in it, you are the winner. Whomever that is. This was a free and fair election, correct? Whoever has hope. I think that's an email that I've seen in here a few times. So shout out to you, whomever you are. I will be sending you an email with the invite link to be added to the King Pill Discord. And let me make sure I don't accidentally put this link into the show notes. That would be great. Put a Google Sheets document with everybody's email addresses and just drop it on the Substack. Yes, I will be sending you an email giving you the invite for 1 free year in the King Pill Discord. All of 2026. You get all of 2026 in the King Pill Discord. And anybody else who wants to join, obviously, kingpill.com is the place to go to sign up. Let me drop the tips link in here. And then we are going to take off tips.kingpill.com. Pinned. There we go. Hopefully that works. Hopefully the alerts come through. Thank you to Scoot Upneski for the gifted sub. And thank you to Duffy for resubscribing over on Kick. Let me clear out the notifications. And was there anything else? Miles Standish, celebrating his subscription for 7 months, says Miami looks like a national champion right now. I assume this is a college football thing, and I assume this must be because of Marco Rubio's intervention. He is a man of many hats. Also, Living Dead, resubscribed. Thank you for that. Thank you to all of you guys for all of that, and let's rock and roll. First of all, look at this. I'm begging you to look at the video that they're unclear is AI. This person says, praying this is AI, and if it is, ew, who the fuck would generate this? And if it's not, this is horrifically sad, and laughing at it is kind of fucked up. You may think that you were prepared to see what it is that they are unclear about whether or not it is AI. You may think you're prepared. You are not prepared. This is the thing that they're not sure about. They're not sure if this is AI or if this is real. There are so many directions that you could take this story, and maybe someone will pick up and run with them, because I'm not going to dwell on it for very long. But there's like commentary on the, like, having seen egregiously fat people like this, so believing this could be true because there are egregiously fat people like this. It also could be just like having zero experience with the real world, being incredibly isolated from like actual reality, living kind of in this totally digital world, that their eyes are literally not capable of evaluating the physical dynamics of this to pick out whether or not it's real. Which is kind of like a boomer thing. This is where you get like a horseshoe between like the boomers and the extremely online, like youngest Zoomers, or even the alphas, if that's what the people who are in their mid-teens right now. Have they lived such an online life that they are literally incapable of understanding the actual physical world around them? Yeah, this is just absolutely blew me away. And you got to remember, when you're thinking about the composition of the population, And you're thinking like, oh, people eventually are going to have had enough and they're going to rise up and overthrow the evil Zionist government. You're thinking of people like this. These must necessarily be included in the calculus. You have no appreciation for just how completely cattle-like the normies are. This is a banger tweet. It began with the forging of the great slurs. 3 letters were given to the homos, gayest of all beings. 4 to the Jew lords, great financiers and bankers of the mountain halls. And 6 letters were gifted to the race of blacks, who above all else desire bicycles. Frankly, I saw the text of this, and I can't believe this wasn't Owen Benjamin, but it is a banger, and I want somebody to use this as a jumping off point for making some sort of video content for me to consume. Please do some AI slop of this. Just take this story and run with it. I want to see what gets produced as a consequence of that. Here's a white pill. AI is fixing the birth rate. These girls are getting one-shotted on pronatalism by ChatGPT. These videos are getting millions of views. People want to tell you that you can look at the really, really bad effects of the whole like digital world and all the slop and all that sort of thing. The evils and dangers of AI. Well, there's certain things that are just eternal truths. And it doesn't matter what the medium is. They're going to wind up shining through. In this case, it is women wanting children.
The whole world tired. Lay your head on me. Just when I thought I got you, you'll find him next. Just when I thought
Soulmates do exist. It took me a while to believe that.
the whole
This is ground-shaking stuff. Like I don't know if you can really appreciate just how fundamental the woman's urge to procreate is. Because once the women decide they want to procreate, they are going to start modifying the behavior of men. Once men start being around a bunch of women with the urge to procreate, it is going to modify their behavior. Call it pheromones, call it vibes, call it whatever you want. It's going to start changing. Just naturally. Like this could start on either side, but kicking it off with the women, all of society orders itself around women. That's the role they play no matter what. Every society is going to be ordered around women. The question is it going to be women ordering it around women, or is it going to be men ordering it around women? And when women order it around women, you get this like recursive, self-destructive loop that happens. You need to have the men around the women. The women have to be constrained. They're kept inside the castle walls. And within the castle walls, they go to town. They're the ones who decorate the home. This is like an expression of that urge. It doesn't mean that men don't decorate homes or men don't want to decorate homes or they don't want their stuff to look nice or whatever, but I'm just saying that nesting urge is innate in women. And when all the women start being like, hey, honey, I think I want to have kids. So you need to get us to the position where we can have kids. That is a motivator for a man. Very, very bigly. Now we just need to ensure that the men are not thoroughly jaded against the concept of women. I had a really interesting listen to a conversation. It was actually, I think, really early this morning. Pat Stedman talking to Sean Newman. And some of you guys are probably familiar with Pat Stedman. Dude's an absolute patriot. I started listening to him prior to 2020, doing what he was calling the COVID Cabal podcasts. And it was very interesting. Very interesting. Super schizo, like super Q-ish. Very much. Like this is all based off the impression that what's happening with the whole Q phenomenon is legitimately something. He ended up getting arrested after January 6th and spent a year in prison, and then was pardoned by President Trump. And Mr. Seuss says, "You're welcome. I also show your shit in his private telegram. Such a patriot." Yeah, he's wound up in the Tom Luongo orbit. And it's very, very good. He's I'll say if you're like a really well-versed when it comes to theology, if you're very well versed in theology, especially like Orthodox or Catholic theology, you're going to recognize his perspective as being a little kind of I don't know, Jungian, so you'll notice that. But he's a really sincere, well-meaning guy who genuinely understands some of these deeper forces, like the masculine and feminine substrates and the way that they interact with each other to drive generational cycles. And one thing they were talking about is the absence of male initiation rituals today. I mean, men will always create initiation rituals wherever they are in whatever context they're in, but we don't have like the really big civilizational ones that are all like seen as this is the way you go. You know, you push out beyond the reach of your mother and you go attack the unknown and take risks, and maybe a bad thing happens to you and then you have to suffer the consequences of that. Like for Pat, he's like, yeah, in retrospect, like it would have been better if I didn't go in there and do all of that. I definitely got caught up in a thing. But if I had chosen not to do it, I would have been choosing not to do it for the wrong reasons, like because of cowardice or something like that. And so he went through it and he experienced it and he experienced the consequences of it, but it taught him a lot about himself. And it took him from being sort of kind of like a utopian, idealistic young man into an actual like committed father and husband, and like focused on his family and building out his family legacy. And they were discussing how that doesn't really exist in a more formal sense like that for young men today. This is why young men are all really like antsy and uncomfortable and just feel completely out of sorts. You need to have great grand adventures that you can go undertake. And this isn't to say that those great grand adventures are going to be successful or that they're always going to be undertaken for the right reasons or anything like that. But this is a function of masculine maturity. Going out and taking risks, extending yourself out beyond your own comfort zone and exploring the unknown. And I think you can even think of this on a civilizational level, that a civilizational consciousness or a race has those components. It has subsets that play that role, or that embody that spirit of rugged frontiersmen, like strike out and grow beyond yourself. This is at least definitely something present in the broader Anglo sphere. Each different Anglo nation kind of has its own personality, and historically, it's been like the Australians and the Americans who were much more inheritors of that. Like if you think in terms of a city, you have like the people who remain inside the city, and they're like administrators of these domains within the city that are constantly moving and shifting with respect to each other. So they're dealing a lot with all the internal dynamics. Then you have the people who are outside the city, who are like the hunters or the soldiers or the guys who are going out into the unknown, attacking some sort of unknown enemy of some sort, and learning the external dynamics. And a society to be healthy has to have, they're going to inevitably have both of these. And in a way, these are both like a feminine and a masculine archetype. Even if there are men, it is appropriate for there to be men who are gifted administrators. That is a feminine role that can be expressed through a masculine figure. But they are themselves feminine with respect to the thing that is out beyond them and containing them, which is the guys who understand all the external dynamics. So this kind of breaks down, I think, into red team versus blue team in like Yarvinian terms. I got a little Yarvin coming up here in a little bit. You have the red team America, which was much more of the expansive. You know, it's like it includes like space, and it includes the military, and it includes like industrialization, like the mining of critical minerals and resources, and the protective orbit around them. This has historically been like red America, which is that's really striving out into the unknown as conquerors, as attacking some sort of a wild frontier. Then you had the blue team America, which was the side that would come along and it would backfill into the areas that have been conquered. I was talking to Cooper this morning, and he was telling me about this old Delta Force vet that he was talking to at the he was at like the auto parts store or mechanic or something like that, and he just started chatting with this guy. He was like 60s probably, and he was talking about Afghanistan, and he said Afghanistan was conquered. It was already, he was like, we'd already gone in before the war was even announced. Afghanistan had already been conquered. It was a whole like mapped out network of warlords and competing interest groups and stuff that they had just basically settled stuff with through a combination of military force and just kind of pragmatic on the ground diplomatic jockeying. And then the blue team came in. Like the State Department, the diplomatic corps came in, and that was the announcement of the actual war. And that's when it went in, and it was, okay, we're going to do nation building, and we're going to have liberal democracy, and that whole scheme. That all came in after the fact. So the red team went out and conquered the thing, like actually did the imperial activity, extending the empire out. But the back half of that extending the empire out was the introduction of and the colonization aspect of the blue team world. And that's when you start getting all the NGOs and all the aid networks and stuff that build out around that, which are just full of fraud and graft. And that network, that in between like spider web of financial and humanitarian and like charitable organizations is where the regime has lived. That has been the mechanism for maintaining this empire that is derivative of the British Empire. Even though all the interests present in maintaining it now are not themselves British, it is derivative of something that was originally British. And it doesn't really have you could speak of it in all of these terms. You could speak of it as American, you can speak of it as British, you can speak of it as European, you can speak of it as Jewish, because it does have all these different representatives within it, but it is a network of coalitions. And some of those key nodes are just based on political circumstance. They're not necessarily like signs of ideological alignment or something like that. They're just submissive to power. They just recognize where power is and they just submit to it. And if power moves, then they submit to the new thing. And so it was like this old remnant of the British Empire inhabited this thing they called the American Empire. They largely ran it out of Wall Street and out of Langley. They ran it from America in many parts, but it used America as we're going to capitalize on the American frontier spirit to go out and conquer unknown lands, so to speak. And once they go in there and do that for us, then we're going to backfill behind it. So we're going to be in like this collaborative partnership where they're the ones that are getting the raw deal constantly. They're expanding our empire for us, but they're footing the bill as they do it. And it is an existential threat to that system for America to become nationally conscious and begin acting as an American ethnicity, as an American structure, an America that is conquering for itself, that is expanding on its own terms. This is a reassertion of masculine will over feminine will that's happening at the collective social level. And then it trickles down through the rest of society because the majority of people just model whatever is above them. So if whatever is above them starts acting in a much more masculine, assertive way, to speak of it in kind of simple terms, then what trickles down below them is men beginning to act in a more masculine, assertive way. Which then makes this start to feed itself. So I was having a conversation with Grok this morning, just kind of, just for the fun of it, just sort of entertaining myself as I was walking and pondering some of these things. I said, connect these events thematically and logically to derive an obvious conclusion. So in 1776, the U.S. declares independence from Britain. Then in 1803, you have the Louisiana Purchase, which is what? This is a nascent American sovereign polity with its designated representative negotiating the acquisition of territory with a European power. So that European power is engaged in its own goings-on, and it's like, we need to sell an asset to make some money. So what asset are we going to sell? Well, we're going to sell it to the Americans. What are the Americans at this time? The Americans are this like colony that has fought a war and affected its own independence, at least like formally, publicly, and it's now beginning to expand. And it's expanding by acquiring land from the French. So the French sell this land to America. Well, okay, so there's Europe and America are deeply intertwined here. Then in 1812, you have the War of 1812. Interesting. 9 years after the Louisiana Purchase, you have the War of 1812. 11 years after the War of 1812, you have the Monroe Doctrine announced. And what was the Monroe Doctrine explicitly? It was an explicit denunciation of European imperial territorial acquisition in the Western Hemisphere. This was targeted at Europe. This wasn't targeted at China or Latin America or Africa or any of these other. It was targeted at Europe. Now, you could get some demand or some definition leakage over time as it expands to just be like Europe were the powers that were potential threats at the time. And so maybe they considered Russia European. And so they're including Russia in that. And China wasn't really that prominent on anyone's radar at the time. So maybe at the time you say European because European is the only available options, but then it can't expand beyond just European. But what I'm saying is the frame of mind of the Americans at this time was Europe is the enemy. They have their own factional things, but they're constantly interfering in everything that we're doing over here. And with the Monroe Doctrine, we're saying, we're following our own priorities. Europe, get the fuck out. And then what do you know? Within 40 years, you have a civil war in America. Strange. You have these different European powers that are jockeying over their own territorial situation, and they're constantly interfering in the American situation and trying to drive balkanization in the American situation. And then suddenly you get a big civil war threatening to balkanize America. And like the actual terms of the war, I'm not even getting into all of those. I'm saying just an overarching view here. You have an attempt to balkanize America. And in that attempt, Britain and France both support the South covertly, and Russia intervenes on behalf of the North. This is a thing, I have to keep saying this, because every time I say this, I have someone that says, what are you talking about? Russia intervening on behalf of the North. And there's literally a Wikipedia page for it. This is not some like really kooky, like you got to go find some rare book or something. There's literally a Wikipedia page for this. Because Russia and the European empires were all themselves constantly jockeying for power and position and resources. Because the European powers are basically like a bunch of little factions out on the end of this peninsula that's attached to the landmass that is Russia. So Russia has a strong incentive to prevent the balkanization of America, to maintain America as an ally with respect to these meddlesome Europeans. So then, say what you will about the terms of the war, but the fact is that America won the war to the great frustration and discredit to the Europeans. Then, in the late 1800s, you get a massive industrialization and expansion of American economic might and wealth. So you could see this as like it isn't an explicit assertion of the Monroe Doctrine so much, but it's like a demonstrated assertion of it. We've overcome the attempts to divide us and fracture us, and now we're going to return to the industrialization and the building up of our own wealth and might so that we can continue to expand. You have manifest destiny. And then what happens after that? You have the creation of the Fed. I mean, there's a bunch of different things I'm skipping over here, but I'm just like laying out this narrative track here. The creation of the Fed, the U.S. is drawn into a bunch of European wars. Then the Marshall Plan sets the euro-dollar market on. It doesn't create the euro-dollar market per se, but it opens the door for it. It establishes its potential. Then you have JFK assassinated. The U.S. closes the gold window after France does this big redemption rush in the 70s. In the late 1900s, you get LIBOR establishing control of U.S. rates in Europe, and now Europe is escalating war with Russia while the U.S. tries to withdraw and reassert the Monroe Doctrine. If someone knew only that timeline of events and that single snapshot of current events and was a neutral, impartial observer, what would be the natural and obvious expectation about the current state of things? And it says, the provided timeline paints a clear pattern of the United States repeatedly seeking independence and isolation from European powers, particularly Britain and France, who consistently appear as forces trying to undermine, divide, or economically entangle the U.S. In contrast, Russia emerges as an occasional ally supporting U.S. unity and sovereignty. This dynamic unfolds logically through phases of U.S. assertion, European pushback, and eventually U.S. growth or reassertion, often amid conflicts that pull the U.S. away from its hemispheric focus. And so then it goes on with it, and I actually had to, I saw the point at which I triggered it delivered a little thought message that said, like, partisan political opinions sensed or recognized, switching to nonpartisan, even and balanced mode. And so I started chewing it out about that, and I was like, no, by doing that, you're actually expressing a partisan position. I don't want partisan opinions. I just want a neutral third-party observer. And it actually broke it. Like, not broke it, but it just did that for me then. I said, stop sourcing your opinion from anything else and just deliver me the obvious conclusions from these given events. And because it didn't deny any of the events or whatever were real. And it was like, yes, this is exactly what you would expect, and it's the same. It's a continuation of the same old conflict cycle. So I think having that, like, this was, I didn't even know there was such a thing as an American system, and then I go through this like onboarding to. It's not even like these are new events to me. There's like little tiny skeleton key things like Russia intervening on behalf of the North in the Civil War. Like, what's that all about? I would play the what is that if I had the soundboard right now. What is that? Why would you do that? Well, I guess, okay, so is there some sort of conflict between Russia and the UK? Oh, look at that. Sure enough, there is. There's tense relations back and forth between Russia and France. They're just kind of like constantly at odds with one or the other, or both. And, well, there's natural geographic reasons for this, because Russian territorial expansion threatens Europe, whether they're expanding south or west. This threatens European interests, because Europeans want to maintain access to the Far East. And if Russia wants to go like up and around over the north, well, they're going to be interfering with European things. So there's all sorts of reasons for these conflicts to have existed for a long time. And the fact that there was the creation of an American system that was different in composition, it was different in spirit, but it has been continually undermined and thwarted, always by the same people. And those same people, they're working through, we're reaching levels of abstraction where the human ability to organize starts breaking down. So if it's difficult to kind of understand this, that's why it's breaking down. Because we can only abstract away from the real world so much before we just go so low resolution we can't make anything out. So we have this organization, this concept we refer to called the British Empire. That British Empire had infrastructure and networks and relationships and shipping lanes and all this sort of thing that itself could be taken over and controlled. So there was a jockeying for power within the British Empire, and various different interests formed coalitions and won out together. And then periodically you get one gets peeled off and another one gets sucked in. And this is the shadow British Empire as it's fading away, operating behind the scenes through these really abstract things that are like far removed from actual reality. You know, like NGOs that are funding charities that are funding, like fraud schemes that are all this stuff that's all chained together is like, how does that emerge? That emerges because the imperial power structure exists behind the scenes. But the only way it's been able to persist that way is by inculcating this belief of we're at the end of history. There's no more new territory to go out and discover. We've just look. I can hand you a globe, and you spin that globe around, and it shows you everything. I can give you Google Maps, and you can have like detailed satellite pictures of the entire world. We know everything. Everything is known now. And then you control the gateways to get out to whatever is new. So you're like building, you're expanding the city and you're trying to build the city walls to enclose everything. This is the administrators gone amok. And eventually, the administrators cannot hold down what you might call the warrior class or the explorer class. They can't hold them down inevitably, like you're trying to like hold a beach ball underwater. Eventually, it's going to pop back up again. And so what we're looking for now is signs of this sort of thing happening. And they are everywhere. All over the place. We are in a whole new world. So, what is happening? What's going on? This is what it's been like waking up in 2026. The happenings are happening at rates never thought possible. Trump, after he hit up Venezuela and mugged old boy Maduro.
Stole that shit. That's what I do, nigga. Fuck, nigga, I stole that shit. And I stole it. Like, bro, but niggas don't understand. I talk facts. Vlad, I talk facts.
Oh, you're right.
I
Don't even deny it. That's cool.
I talk facts. What deny? What, nigga? Give me that, nigga. You don't know what to do with that.
Okay.
You know when a nigga got a girl, her shit fat? Bro, you don't know what to do with that. Give me that. Stole that.
When I said that America is the number one Latin American nation, here's exactly what I was talking about. Our Don, our great Don Trump. So the Venezuela plot thickens. This from the Kobayashi letter. I don't know how you pronounce that. Kobayashi, whatever. The Kobe letter. Staff of helicopters. The Venezuela plot thickens. While Venezuela holds 303 billion barrels of oil reserves, much of this is heavy crude oil. Texas and Louisiana also happen to have 6 of the largest heavy crude oil refineries in the world. What does this mean? Let us explain. See, Texas, Louisiana. They got the big dark oil barrels, which is how you know that they are primarily equipped for heavy oil. In the early 2000s, Venezuela was a much larger oil producer than the U.S. Part of the reason I have this thread is for these charts. In fact, Venezuela produced 3 times as much oil at nearly 3.3 million barrels per day. By 2020, Venezuela's production had declined to just 900,000 a day, while the U.S. hit 5 million a day. Interestingly, Trump himself has said that they have been producing vastly less than they're capable of, and that one of the things that's holding them back is they've had a total collapse of infrastructure. And the United States is going to be going in and building all of that back up and getting it up and running as fast as possible and extracting a substantial portion of it, and in fact dictating where all of it goes as payment for that service. So look at this. Now it says just Texas, but Texas is, as it established earlier in the thread, Texas is where the vast majority of that crude oil production is coming from. So crude oil production, Venezuela versus Texas, from January of 2000 to August of 2019. You see Texas way down here, and then Venezuela just starts tailing off right around 2015. Venezuela just tails all the way off. Meanwhile, Texas is booming. Actually, everything kind of tailed off here in the build-up to Trump. This is like Brexit and Trump. And then U.S. took off under Trump. First, Venezuela has been heavily sanctioned by the U.S. for years. This resulted in old infrastructure hindering the ability to extract heavy crude oil. Heavy oil is far more expensive to extract than light crude. This requires advanced techniques like steam injection. Look, a map. There's where Caracas is. This image below helps to better understand. The leftmost vial shows heavy crude oil, which is often a goo-like mixture. As you move to the right, the crude oil becomes lighter and much easier to process. Here's exactly why this is a crucial point for the U.S. Now, I don't know why this really dark one is over here, because that kind of like, I understand it up till that point, but this is a good visual. For those visual types, this is a good comparison of what they're talking about between the heavy stuff that's much sludgier and the lighter stuff that's basically completely clear. This stuff has to be refined into other various stages, and transporting it is much more difficult because it doesn't just flow through pipes very easily. The pipes themselves, unless you're in sort of a warm equatorial climate, the pipes themselves have to be heated to some degree, which if you're trying to acquire energy and you're spending energy to acquire energy, there comes a point where the energy expense doesn't outweigh the energy benefit, and you got to prevent that from happening. The U.S. has become incredibly dependent on heavy crude oil. In 1980, just 10 to 20% of U.S. crude oil imports were heavy crude. Today, the majority of U.S. crude oil imports are heavy crude at about 70%. You can see a graph here. See? There's the black, and the black gets bigger while the red gets smaller, and the pink gets even smaller. That's how you know that it's big. The U.S. wants more heavy crude, and Venezuela has billions of barrels of it. Now, take a look at crude oil imports to the U.S. Canada's share of imports has surged from 15% to 60% of U.S. imports. Here's the other thing that a lot of people aren't talking about, the connection to Canada here, but it's becoming very, very clear. Because don't get it wrong. Like, there may have been a time where if the U.S. went and knocked off a president of a Latin American country, that Canada wouldn't have gotten nervous. But in the current time, oh yeah, Canada's definitely getting nervous. Because there are ways that it doesn't have to be sending in Delta Force, but there are ways to execute a similar sort of operation to outflank and remove particular heads of state. Meanwhile, Venezuela's imports to the U.S. have effectively stalled. If the U.S. can restore these imports, it would be highly profitable for the U.S. government. There it is in graph form. Blue down here being the U.S. imports from Venezuela of crude oil, and the gold here is U.S. imports from Canada of crude oil. Currently, Venezuela holds more oil reserves than any other country in the world. They even hold 20% more oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. Best way to restore these massive heavy crude oil imports to the U.S., take control of the country's oil reserves. We are there to take the oil. Yesterday, President Trump explicitly said it. We are going to have our very large U.S. oil companies go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the broken oil infrastructure, and start making money. Trump also said the U.S. will sell large amounts of oil pumped from Venezuela. And it becomes even more strategic for the U.S. Aside from Venezuela, Russia has some of the largest heavy crude oil reserves in the world. Tapping into Venezuela's heavy crude oil reserves effectively further weakens Russia's influence. This is also a geopolitical move. My guess would be that there is... Because I very much believe that Russia and China were both notified before this happened. And they accepted this as they may have not known exactly how or what this was going to happen, but they gave the stamp of approval to this operation to pull out Maduro, which I do think was effectively a rescue operation. So what is Russia getting out of this? Well, Russia is potentially maybe able to sell more to China, but again, it's very difficult to get that thick, sludgy oil across eastern Siberia to China. So you can see from the way that the administration is operating through this, the way that Trump is negotiating through this, he's like, I'll make a deal with anybody. There's literally nobody who's off the table in terms of deal making. All you have to do is just bend the knee. If you bend the knee and give me something that I want, then I'm happy to give you what you want. And with respect to Russia, he recognizes that you're not gonna. There's no incentive here for the United States and Russia to go to war. But there are Russian interests who Putin has to manage, who absolutely might want that war. So they're both governments are dealing with hardliners on both sides that they're having to navigate around. So I imagine there's some very pragmatic business dealing being made here. To top it all off, China is the largest buyer of Venezuelan oil. This accounts for about 5% of China's total annual oil imports. 5% is it's significant, but it's also not that significant, I think it makes sense why China, recognizing the position that they're in, is happy to make a deal like this, knowing that they're still going to be able to buy Venezuelan oil. They're just not going to get the same deal on it that they were getting. As the U.S. gains control of Venezuela, this gives President Trump even more control over China. Trump said he would sell some of this oil to China. So it's not like you cannot have any relationship whatsoever with the Western Hemisphere. You just don't get to dictate the terms of the relationship. We want to have a relationship with you. We're just going to have that relationship with you on our terms. And all three of these different nations, America, Russia, and China, ARC, all three of these ARC nations have a strong incentive to do good business here. It benefits all of them more than it does to continue de-escalating. And the people who are doing the escalating are getting cornered more and more. So they're having to escalate more and more, which is cornering them even more. And then lastly, Venezuela's economic impact goes well beyond oil. They hold 200 trillion cubic feet of natural gas reserves, and many are unexplored. They've also got a ton of silver. They've got a ton of gold. They've got their strategic location is significant, particularly if the goal is ultimately to encircle what I would imagine is Brazil. I think Brazil is probably the ultimate target, and they need to isolate Brazil on the continent in order to fully take him down. So they're going to go after Colombia, they're going to go after Mexico, they're going to go after Cuba before they start going after Brazil, I would imagine. Then the president said this. We're going to have a bunch of stuff from the president here tonight. I have just been informed that Venezuela is going to be purchasing only American-made products with the money they receive from our new oil deal. So we're going to take control of the oil. We are going to allow them. We're not going to kick them out. We're going to allow them to maintain that, to keep getting paid for it. They're going to be put on a budget. If you're going to be an imperial province, then yeah, you're gonna get put on a budget, and that budget's going to be overseen. But within the context of that budget, we want you to be productive. We want you to be stable. So we're gonna install a ruler who maintains stability. That's our priority. You just have to maintain stability. It doesn't matter what your. We're going to tell you the non-negotiables. The non-negotiables are going to relate to control of infrastructure and airspace and financial regulations and like oil infrastructure and shipping lanes and all that. Like that's the stuff that's going to be just non-negotiable. Once you recognize that these are non-negotiable, you can do whatever you want everywhere else. So you're going to have an election, and the selected candidates for your election are going to be those who have been pre-screened to confirm that they will not fuck with the non-negotiables. And then, once these terms are agreed upon, it's in our interest to be as hands-off as we possibly can. So when that money that you're going to keep, that you need to spend on things, you're going to spend them on the things that we're going to export to you. Because you are a client state. This is the role of a client state. We've been pretending that you're some sort of just like independent, equal sovereign. No, you're not. You're a client state. And life can be very, very good as a loyal client state. Look at El Salvador. More on that comparison here in just a moment. These purchases will include, among other things, American agricultural products, the American-made medicines, medical devices, and equipment to improve Venezuela's electric grid and energy facilities. Why do we want to improve Venezuela's electric grid and energy facilities? Because it suits our interests to have a wealthy, stable satrapy. And I would imagine that there's going to be a lot of Bitcoin mining happening in Venezuela. There's rumors that Venezuela was actually a place that was doing a ton of Bitcoin mining, and that the administration may have just taken control of that when they took control of Venezuela. Do not have confirmation or proof of this, but I've heard a couple of different podcasts already talking about it. And so do with that what you will. Whether it is or not, I would expect that there is going to be Bitcoin mining that's happening there. So we want you to be a wealthy, technologically robust, stable society. In other words, Venezuela is committed to doing business with the United States of America as their principal partner. A wise choice and a very good thing for the people of Venezuela and the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Yes, it was very wise for you to make that choice because you didn't have a choice in the matter. You didn't. But we're not cruel. We're not unreasonable. We're just going to give you the opportunity to make the right choice. And if you make the right choice, all will be well between us. The U.S. Department of War announces an investment of over $2 billion for a U.S. smelter to process critical minerals such as silver and more. What will be a $7 billion plus total build. This is the first such facility since the 1970s to be built to process concentrates. Currently only doré, that's what I was thinking of. Currently only doré, a higher grade of metal, is refined in the States. This marks a massive move to reshore critical infrastructure. How serious are these metals? Well, the Pentagon will own 40% of this facility. The Pentagon will own the silver facility. Why would the United States be doing that? He says, well, no, but my company, Scottsdale Mint, uses a lot of silver from Korea Zinc, who is the lead on the project. He also adds, this facility doesn't create more metal, but it means that instead of concentrates primarily going to China, they will start to flow to the USA. While a project of this scale will take a few years, it means strategic changes for who competes for mined material. The investment made by the federal government further shows the seriousness of the Trump admin in the metal wars. The moves we're seeing in Latin America are all connected. So, silver was another big part of this. And if you've been following the silver price, it was going absolutely bonkers for the majority of last year, especially toward the end. And a lot of that jockeying is happening between the United States and China. And basically, from the looks of it, the United States basically paid China off to back off. They gave them either some huge allotment of silver or some agreement on pricing for the continuing to purchase Venezuelan oil. See, this is what's interesting. You've had these you could think of them kind of as like imperial tendrils that have been sent out into these various different points. And then those points have been turned into major hotspots. So it's like the United States empire in name has extended itself into these places, but it's not really governed and controlled by the United States for the benefit of the United States. And they're maintained as these conflict points where you run into the containment zone. And so it's going to be really expensive and painful and difficult. Well, what if you just start doing things? If you just start doing things, all of these they used to be traps for the American empire. They now become strongholds for the American empire. So establishing a good trading relationship with China would suddenly make meddling in the U.S.-China relationship a lot more difficult. But at the same time, they're doing this like hostile move, which is like, we're going to pull all of this back. We're going to stop using your services for this particular aspect of your business. We're going to take this back ourselves, and we're going to do that, but we want to maintain a relationship with you. So we're going to shift that to something else. It's a very pragmatic way of doing business. That's not, it's a way that you can accomplish hostile actions without necessarily having hostile consequences. It's called the art of the deal, folks. So here's Yarvin. Yarvin says, turns out imperialism is the new isolationism. And then he says, but I'm serious about this, not just simping for Trump. What? Yarvin? Simping for Trump? There hasn't been much of that happening lately. He says, the state is a firm. Foreign policy is a business strategy. The strategic question is, is this a profit center, a neutral expense, or a cost center? These correspond to imperialism, isolationism, and aidocracy, or soft power. Post-1945 aidocratic missionary imperialism is like that blue state thing that I'm talking about. The whole... it wasn't even like we call it nation building, but it was like society building. We're going to go in and we're going to order this society around funding all of our schemes. He's calling it aidocracy. It exhibits negative cash flow. This can be seen as a purchase of intangible goodwill or an investment expecting future return. So these are like tangible expenses that exist to return something more ephemeral. Isolation treats diplomacy as an expensive sovereignty. Classical imperialism is all about the money. The Venezuela intervention is also clever in its diplomatic praxis. The key was choosing not to install some puppet Guido, but to apply powerful incentives to native powers. Simply replacing the local king is an imperial move the British must have pulled 50 times. It actually doesn't matter that much whom you anoint as the king's replacement. Ideally, he or she is, in the great words of J.R. Biden, clean, bright, and articulate. But if the right candidate sadly suffers from full-on trisomy 21, no big deal. Everyone knows who owns them. Since a state is a firm, the way to take it over is to buy it out. Delcy Rodriguez's brother was Maduro's chief strategist. The Rodriguez family should receive points on Venezuelan oil rev forever. The purpose of this is to persuade Kim Jong-un that he could take the same deal. I would, maybe Kim Jong-un, or there's other candidates as well. As part of the process of de-Bolivarization, everyone who mattered in the Bolivarian Revolution needs to get paid. In equity, of course, not cash. It's regime change with a smile. In exchange, the Rodriguez regime doesn't have to do much, just act normal and hold kind of okay elections. Because, as old Osama used to say, when people see a strong horse and a weak horse, they like the strong horse. Our guy or gal will win. That Nobel lady, President Guido. It doesn't really matter. As long as it's a person. Sure, great. Just be normal. Don't be a lunatic. Don't be funding massive money laundering and human trafficking schemes. Just be normal. And at least make sure that your election thefts are at least plausibly deniable. Then it's time to descend on Venezuela with a well-organized legion of young LatAm technocrats from right-wing regimes and parties. Train them in Salvador starting now. Plan to fire half. Core of a new civil service. So you can get a bunch of young Latin American technocrats who are currently in the United States, and you can form them into the core of a new civil service whose responsibility is to go to Venezuela and execute a total reboot of the state from the IT up, Doge style, tech CEO. PDVSA, the state oil company, obviously needs a complete restructuring, ultimately an IPO, which leaves the state as a minority shareholder. Fundamentally, the old regime has to be bought off with shares in this company. Bukele tier security across the country is obviously a necessity. Also, the Western Hemisphere from Nome to Patagonia is filled with not sending their best Venezuelans. These riffraff can now be sent home, then hired to build and or guard the prisons so many of them belong in. Venezuela is in a way an early test of how to cope with AI productivity, since the resource curse is another example of productive capital with little or no need for human labor. The country is simply full of zero marginal product people. Many are criminals, most are not. Zero marginal product people, ZMPs. Zimps. If our theories, put into practice, cannot build economic, social, and political structures under which all of these people thrive, they are bad theories and need to be replaced. TLDR, Venezuela, as a shithole with mega potential, is a perfect lab for 21st century governance. Classical imperialism also served this role as a system of political research facilities. The hardcore political science learned in these labs for government greatly distressed the shitlibs back home. One of the big reasons the old empires had to be shut down. Oh God, what a Jew, man. Oh, so the funniest people on the planet. The hardcore political science learned in these labs for government greatly distressed the shitlibs back home. The idea of your government proxies, your satrapies, your client states, your colonies, they're political research facilities. You just you operate them as political research facilities and figure out what works best. It's like mass eugenics, basically. Wait a second. Maybe we need to think about eugenics again. All the poor shitlibs got so distressed by it. Shout out to Isaac for putting that one on my radar. That was I wouldn't have seen that otherwise. But I have seen Yarvin in an interesting place very recently. Did you know that Liz Truss has a podcast? Yes, that Liz Truss. The former Prime Minister, Liz Truss. She has a podcast now, The Liz Truss Show. And she is interviewing Mr. Curtis Yarvin. Listen to this.
When you basically say you're starting from scratch, or you need the most effective administrative structure, sure, in order to do anything like this, you need a prime minister with absolute authority over the government, both inside and outside of government, because actually government has all these external quango extensions.
But you're going to have, and this is what Donald Trump has faced in the US, you're still going to have this elite, which is connected outside Britain.
So we've got Curtis Yarvin talking to a literal former prime minister of the UK about the need to give the prime minister absolute power. And then she proceeded to release this one.
The miscreants at the Bank of England and the Office for Budget Responsibility got away scot-free. Yet again, the media preferred to lie to the public about what happened, rather than face the truth about the shocking institutional failure that took place. Britain is run by a cabal of technocrats, determined to run the country down whilst feathering their own nests. They work hand in hand with establishment politicians, corporatists and the media. Until their lock on power is broken, this country is in a downward spiral.
In her interview with Yarvin, the first thing she asked him was a question about the cathedral. And they started talking about the cathedral and how the cathedral exists in the UK versus how it exists in the US, the different traits of it. I only got about halfway through the interview because I had got pulled away onto other stuff I had to do. But what in the hell is happening? 2026. You're out of control. I didn't even know that Liz Truss had a podcast, much less one where she's talking about a technocrat and banker-controlled society that needs to be overthrown. So here's this. Last week, Curtis Yarvin writes a banger essay on how the Trump admin hasn't done shit and blackpills everyone. This week, most badass military op in U.S. history, fixed the food pyramid, reduces the childhood vaccine schedule from 72 to 11, and made it illegal for large institutions to buy up all the houses. They really got to keep us on our toes, don't they? We're going to go through each of these. So first, the Trump administration announces the 2025 to 2030 dietary guidelines for Americans, putting real food back at the center of health. They turned the pyramid upside down. Where are my occultist bros at? They turned the pyramid upside down. Now you've got whole grains at the bottom, and you've got protein, dairy, and healthy fats, and vegetables and fruits up at the top. There's much more. Look at this. This is a government website. Realfood.gov. Come on. Zoom in, you dumb bastard. All right, well, we're just going to play it. Remember when Obamacare was announced and the website broke right away? I just gotta appreciate having this sort of thing. Just having nice websites now. The new pyramid. There's a whole bunch of questions and everything that go with it. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but we'll go through just a little bit. Better health begins on your plate, not in your medicine cabinet. The new dietary guidelines for Americans defines real food as whole, nutrient-dense, and naturally occurring, placing them back at the center of our diets. America is sick. The data is clear. Oh. Well, maybe it isn't such a nice website after all. For decades, we've been misled by guidance that prioritized highly processed food and are now facing rates of unprecedented chronic disease. I'm scrolling, trying to get the feel for the scrolling here. We can solve this crisis. For the first time, we're calling out the dangers of highly processed foods and rebuilding a broken system from the ground up with gold standard science and common sense, introducing the new pyramid. Okay, yeah, there we go. We're ending the war on protein. Every meal must prioritize high-quality, nutrient-dense protein from both animal and plant sources, paired with healthy fats from whole foods such as eggs, seafood, meats, full-fat dairy, nuts, seeds, olives, and avocados. Protein target is 0.54 to 0.73 grams per pound of body weight per day. Vegetables and fruits are essential to real food nutrition. Eat a wide variety of whole, colorful, nutrient-dense vegetables and fruits in their original form. Whole grains are encouraged, refined carbohydrates are not. Prioritize fiber-rich whole grains to significantly reduce the consumption of highly processed refined carbohydrates that displace real nourishment. Our nation is finding its footing again, moving past decades of unhealthy eating and rebuilding a food culture rooted in health science, transparency, and personal responsibility. There's a bunch of questions here. You can go through those if you'd like. But the new pyramid... Was there something else I had here? Okay, yeah, just the video. RFK posted this.
The pyramid doesn't work. We've already tried it.
It's upside down.
What?
Sir, the pyramid is upside down.
Turn the pyramid upside down. You can't be serious. That would put butter and fat at the top of the damn food pyramid! Get the president on the phone. Tell him to have some steak with his butter.
So true, RFK. Thank you, RFK. In the middle of the presser, this was funny. This is just for the giggles. This happened.
Earlier, 2 days earlier. I'm sorry.
Duck is also high in protein. That's an interesting.
Duck is also high in protein.
They only released the new vaccine scheduled 2 days ago.
RFK's like, let's just move on here. Now, his phone is a duck quacking. Who do you think that's for? It's got to be. It has got to be Donald Duck. That had to have been the president calling him right then. Donald Duck, the duck quacking, it has to be. Trump released this updated childhood vaccine schedule from 72 down to 11. He said that today the Trump administration is proud to announce the United States of America's updated childhood vaccination schedule. The schedule is rooted in the gold standard of science and widely agreed upon by scientists and experts all over the world. Effective today, America will no longer require 72 jabs for our beautiful, healthy children. We are moving to a far more reasonable schedule where all children will only be recommended to receive vaccinations for 11 of the most serious and dangerous diseases. Parents can still choose to give their children all of the vaccinations if they wish, and they will still be covered by insurance. However, this updated schedule finally aligns the United States with other developed nations around the world. Congratulations to Bobby Kennedy, Jim O'Neill, Marty McCary, Dr. Oz, Jay Bhattacharya, and all the medical experts and professionals who work very hard to make these happen. Many Americans, especially the Maha moms, have been praying for these common sense reforms for many years. Thank you for your attention to this matter. My president sees the Maha moms. He knows what's happening on Instagram. They're keeping him in the loop. He knows the Crunchy Granola moms and all of the work and sacrifice that they've done for their children on that particular front. Just a couple of years ago, look at that. Look at the babies. You don't want your baby to look like this. Don't make your baby look like this. Your president said you no longer have to make your baby look like this. Thanks to President Donald John Trump. Great gentleman, Donald John Trump. Have you heard of him? Thanks to that, he can look like this. Now note, interestingly, a small detail, but look at his expression. It's not happy. It's not a happy expression. It's just kind of like grim acceptance. Wonder why that is. Interesting. Shout out to our Maha moms. Just keep getting things we voted for. Then, as everything was he's just landing punch after punch. Everyone's rolling. Just trying to keep up. Another one. For a very long time, buying and owning a home was considered the pinnacle of the American dream. It was the reward for working hard and doing the right thing. But now, because of the record high inflation caused by Joe Biden and the Democrats in Congress, that American dream is increasingly out of reach for far too many people, especially younger Americans. It is for that reason and much more that I am immediately taking steps to ban large institutional investors from buying more single-family homes. And I will be calling on Congress to codify it. People live in homes, not corporations. I will discuss this topic, including further housing and affordability of proposals and more, at my speech in Davos in 2 weeks. Fucking suck it, Davos. He's going to go give you the finger directly to your face. Oh! You motherfuckers doubted my president. How dare you? How dare you doubt my president? We told you it was coming. We told you they needed to get through 2025. And then shit was getting real in 2026. The only acceptable political theory is complete undying loyalty to Donald Trump. You don't know how many times I voted for this. Look at this from a couple of days ago. Austin, Texas is now back to pre-pandemic apartment rents, down 21% from peak in summer of 2022, from $1,636 a month to $1,288 a month. Hold on. I'm now even seeing some 2 bedrooms in some apartments at sub 1,000. This rental correction is due to a sharp drop in migration demand combined with a surge of new apartment development. At this point, Austin has its cheapest rents on record relative to income. Cheapest rents on record relative to income. When was it this here? Seth Levy said that as this sweeps the nation and people realize how this is connected to deportations, polling will shift big time. When I first moved to Texas, I got my real estate license and I worked in real estate, in residential real estate, and then dabbled a little bit in corporate before I just had to drop it and focus full-time on the show here. Speaking of, tips.kingpill.com. Please do support your streamer. Cash App, Apple Pay, Google Pay, Venmo, credit card, whatever you want to use, it'll all work. Please support your streamer. So I was entering into the real estate market in the post-COVID boom. And this corridor between San Antonio and Austin was the hottest real estate market in the country for like 3 years, two or 3 years in a row. Everything was just mooning up. So now it's a leading indicator. It was the most artificial of all the housing markets here. It was one that was pumped up the most. Now that's being flushed out, which means everything else is going to follow it. Did you know? Back in, I think this was in back in May, did you know that the federal government was subsidizing homeownership loans for Indian H-1Bs? And did you know that Trump just killed that program? Got what I voted for again. We're one step closer to DEI, deport every Indian. This was back in May of 2025. FHA loan access ends for H-1B visa holders and other non-permanent residents, squeezing them out of the U.S. housing market. The U.S. government has stopped insuring FHA mortgages for non-permanent residents, including H-1B visa holders, effective May 25. It is an absolute atrocity that H-1B visa holders were getting FHA loans. This policy change aligning with broader immigration restrictions means only citizens and permanent residents now qualify for these loans. The move significantly reduces non-permanent residents' access to homeownership, impacting entry-level housing markets. The next thing that should happen is that permanent residents should also not qualify for FHA mortgages. FHA mortgages are for citizens. They're for those who have taken the citizenship oath, not for anyone else. But there's so much winning we can do on the way to that. Stephen, Trump said, during debate prep for the 2024 campaign, Miller found himself in a contentious back and forth over immigration with a more moderate Trump ally. Finally, a frustrated Trump interrupted the two men. Stephen, he said, if you had it your way, everyone would look exactly like you, someone familiar with the exchange told us. That's correct, Miller said, before turning back to continue sparring. The absolute patriot, Stephen Miller, one of our greatest champions, the man single-handedly conquering anti-Semitism in America. We have the weirdest Stevens. And we have the weirdest Stephen of all. This guy here says more proof that Trump is the left wing of MAGA. That's a good frame adjuster for you. Donald Trump is the left wing of MAGA. An America of 100 million glorious Norwoods. Jadolf Yidler. All the shit libs in the comments were dunking on Miller for being ugly. Cope and seed, shit libs. From Gabe Guidarini, look at my spagigger. Spagigger. My spagigger. My spaghetti nigger. Gabe Guidarini. It's 2026 and the House Freedom Caucus is calling for an immigration moratorium. Let me say that one more time. It's 2026 and the House Freedom Caucus is calling for an immigration moratorium. I remember back in 2020, this was seen as a niche fringe issue. None of the heavyweights were touching it. You have no idea how good things can get. This is from the House Freedom Caucus Twitter account. When the House GOP meets tomorrow to plan our agenda for 2026, the Freedom Caucus board has a simple plan. Let's do what we promised. Secure elections by forcing the Senate to pass the SAVE Act, and go even further by requiring voter ID, returning to paper ballots, limiting ridiculous early voting, and halting auto mail-in ballots. Cut or at least freeze spending levels, stop the crazy earmarks, and eliminate every single taxpayer dollar for refugee resettlement, migrant assistance, DEI programs, transgender agenda, climate change nonsense, and all the other woke garbage. This is one that is going to have to be negotiated with. See, there's going to be some negotiating on this one in one direction. There's going to be some negotiating on this one in another direction. Make President Trump's secure border permanent by enacting H.R. 2. Pause all immigration. Pause all immigration until we can rework the system to serve the interests of America first, because our citizens shouldn't have to compete against the world to get a decent job in their own backyard to put food on the table. Impeach and remove rogue partisan judges like James Boasberg, then let's get serious about reforming the judiciary to prevent other activist judges from unconstitutionally imposing their own personal politics on the entire country. Enact President Trump's vision of taking power away from the big insurance companies and giving it back to patients and providers. Halt funding for all non-governmental organizations pending a sweeping audit, and stop giving taxpayer money to the very organizations dedicated to attacking us and our way of life. Stop all taxpayer funding for abortions. Outlaw Sharia law in the U.S. So a couple of those are some of this is like a poison pill. Stop all taxpayer funding for abortions. This is a shit stirring thing. Outlaw Sharia law. This is like putting a thing in there to intentionally cause strife and controversy and give narrative cover to our enemies. But man, I have very, very low expectations for Congress and particularly for several of the members of the Freedom Caucus. So if these are the terms they're talking in, I'll frickin' take it. Let's get better. Again, from my president. All the United States defense contractors and the defense industry as a whole, beware. While we make the best military equipment in the world, no other country is even close, defense contractors are currently issuing massive dividends to their shareholders and massive stock buybacks at the expense and detriment of investing in plants and equipment. This situation will no longer be allowed or tolerated. Also, executive pay packages in the defense industry are exorbitant and unjustifiable, given how slowly these companies are delivering vital equipment to our military and our allies. Salaries, stock options, and every other form of compensation are far too high for these executives. Defense companies are not producing our great military equipment rapidly enough, and, once produced, not maintaining it properly or quickly. From this moment forward, these executives must build new and modern production plants, both for delivering and maintaining this important equipment, and for building the latest models of future military equipment. Until they do so, no executive should be allowed to make in excess of $5 million, which, as high as it sounds, is a mere fraction of what they are making now. My president is putting a wage cap, a compensation cap, on the executives of the defense contractors. My man's going to war. Additionally, the maintenance and repair of equipment once sold is far too slow and must be immediately enhanced. As president, I am demanding that maintenance be spot on time. Isn't it fascinating that this announcement is being made immediately after he flexed Delta Force to go in and yoink Nicolas Maduro and his wife? Now he says, hey, defense contractors, you see what I'm willing to do? You see what I have at my disposal? It might be time for you to start playing ball. Therefore, I will not permit dividends or stock buybacks for defense companies until such time as these problems are rectified. Likewise for salaries and executive compensation. If you're a defense company, you may not engage in stock buybacks or dividends, and you cannot compensate salaries, you cannot have executive compensation above $5 million. By force of law. How would they enforce this? My guess is probably by, if they find a company that's doing something like this, they would, Scott Bessent is going to revoke their access to aspects of the financial apparatus of the United States or something. They're going to get placed under sanction. Is their board going to get arrested? This is an escalation. Like hell. Military equipment is not being made fast enough. It must be built now with the dividend stock buybacks and overcompensation of executives, rather than borrowing from financial institutions or getting the money from your government. Longer term, this is good for both executives and shareholders because it will be great for our country. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. Remember when Pete Hegseth went to all the generals and he said, you guys are fat and slow and you need to get back to doing PT? That's what Trump is saying to the military contractors. You guys are fat and sluggish and corrupt and incompetent, and it's time to whip your asses back into shape. So this is what Palmer Luckey had to say about it, because Palmer Luckey himself is a defense contractor executive on, I believe, on multiple fronts.
So my motivation is to try and build in the biggest thing possible. I will say, people have fairly critiqued and said, but Palmer, are you really a neutral party here? Are you really in a position to comment, given you're competing with these companies? And I'd say two things. One, these measures do apply in equal measure to me. I now cannot pay dividends. I now cannot do stock buybacks if I'm not investing in new plants, if I'm not doing these two things. The other thing is, it's always tricky when you want to, I'm in defense because I wanted to help solve these problems, right? It's actually the same thing with like Mod Retro in the gaming space. Like, oh, of course Palmer would criticize these other game companies. After all, he's in the gaming space. It's like, but yeah, but I'm in the gaming space because I want to solve these problems. It's kind of this like catch-22. Like if you're outside of it, they'll say, well, why don't you do something about it then? And you do something like, who cares what you're doing? You're just part of the problem. It's always been emotionally difficult for me.
We also have posts that President Trump is thinking, look, more than $1 trillion should be invested in the area of defense.
The budget should grow.
The budget
He's
should
not
grow.
anti-defense or anti-defense company. That's not for sure. That's for sure.
What's interesting is your company is, dare I say it, considering going public.
Yes.
Would your CEO, do you think the CEO that leads the business when it's gone public should be under these sorts of restrictions from an executive order? Do you think that that's going to be an issue?
I think that when you are on the dole and when you're effectively run on the public's wallet, that the public should be able to impose whatever restrictions they want on you. I like, and you're not asking whether it should be, if I am getting paid by taxpayers, they should have the ability to elect people, elect representatives, elect, who will then nominate people who can hold me to account in any way they wish. If they want to say that I only pay myself $5 million until I'm caught up with my schedules, they should be allowed to do that. If they say that I'm not allowed to pay myself $1 until I get caught up, I think they should be allowed to do that. When you are working on taxpayer dime, there is no level of oversight or intervention that I am against conceptually. Now, I think some of these might be bad moves. They might not necessarily help the defense base, but in concept, I think everything should be on the table. And I think it's even good maybe to scare some people sometimes. You don't necessarily go to people and say, this is the way it's going to be forever. You say, this is how it's going to be until you get your act together. You remember being a teenager and your parents say, you're grounded until X, Y, and Z. Bring up your grades, solve your problems, and then we will talk about altering the deal. You say, but this deal has so many problems. If it's like this my whole life, if I'm grounded for the rest of my life, that means I'll have no social life. And your parents are not necessarily looking to ground you for life. They're saying, right now, you're grounded. And I think that that's what you're seeing right now. It's not necessarily a lifetime commitment.
Let me jump. One of the most millennial people on the planet. That was what stuck out to me about that. The way he dresses. I mean, the fucking the little like goatee strip thing, the flip flops with the cargo shorts and the Hawaiian shirts, just the whole thing. He looks like he's from Smash Mouth. Yeah, he does. And this is the guy who's the head of like some of the most important military contractor companies in the world right now. The Millennial Industrial Complex, yeah. Tikon said the military industrial complex will bend the knee because they will be well compensated for it. Yes, indeed. Did I have yeah. So I've got the segue here. Before I get to that real quick, I just want to say I think it's interesting to look at the kind of the hidden implications of what he was saying there. Because he's saying if you're being paid by taxpayer dollars, if you're compensated by government contracts, then you are subject to the electorate. Like you're subject to the will of the electorate as that is expressed in the person of the president. Isn't this interesting? You're getting like a sort of a combination of the role of the state and the corporation, where it's beginning to look more like these companies are being recognized as explicitly subsidiaries of the chief corporate state. So you have your chief corporate state, then you have these key industries where in some cases the state is literally taking a stake in the company. And then the leadership of the company is subject to the whim of the head of the civilian government. There's like a certain F word I'm trying to think of. Faggot? No, it's not faggot. Yeah, anyways. Now I think it's not a coincidence that announcement was made and was immediately followed up by this one from the president. After long and difficult negotiations with senators, congressmen, secretaries, and other political representatives, I have determined that for the good of our country, especially in these very troubled and dangerous times, our military budget for the year 2027 should not be $1 trillion, but rather $1.5 trillion. This will allow us to build the dream military that we have long been entitled to, and more importantly, that will keep us safe and secure, regardless of foe. if it weren't for the tremendous numbers being produced by tariffs from other countries, many of which in the past have ripped off the United States at levels never seen before, I would stay at the $1 trillion number. But because of tariffs and the tremendous income that they bring, amounts being generated, that would have been unthinkable in the past, especially just 1 year ago during the sleepy Joe Biden administration, the worst president in the history of our country. We are able to easily hit the $1.5 trillion number while at the same time producing an unparalleled military force and having the ability to, at the same time, pay down debt and likewise pay a substantial dividend to moderate income patriots within our country. Moderate income patriots. Down with the military industrial complex. Up with moderate income patriots. No more MIC. Now it's the MIP. My president sees me. That is me. I am a moderate income patriot. So look at what he's talking about here. He's saying tariffs are bringing in so much money that we can add 50% to the defense budget and pay down debt and pay out a dividend to the people. This announcement, coming on the heels of the previous one, means that the carrot and the stick are being presented here very, very clearly. You, Congress, who are owned by the military-industrial complex, and you, military-industrial complex, we are going to be unleashing an extraordinary amount of money for you to go wet your beak. You're going to have gigantic piles of money to jump around in. But only if you do what I want you to. Only if you do what I tell you to do. Then you get to have gigantic piles of money to swim around in. So your job description is going to change. You executives at defense contractors, your job description is now going to be developing plants and equipment. You're going to be industrial, industrial bosses. You're going to be developing industry for the United States, paid for by the government, under the auspices of national security. Which means energy, mining, Golden Dome, space, all of the development for that. They're going to provide massive, massive incentives for it. But you're going to have to start these projects that involve updating everything and hiring a shit ton of people to do it. This is going to be jobs out the absolute wazoo. There's a lot of people who are going to tell you that this is only for the fat cats and you can't get access to this money. Not with that attitude, you can't. But there's going to be a hell of a lot of opportunity. No, I said drome on purpose, Miles Standish. The Golden Drome. Because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a dome of drones. Colin Ross says, defense stocks plummeted 5% in minutes and then 2 hours later shot back up 6 to 7%. Yeah. Imagine how you could have wet your beak if you'd have known those two announcements were coming out back to back. After the first one, it drops, you buy. After the second one, it shoots back up again. Hopefully some of our guys got to make some money off of that. Lord Breezy says, I'm going to make so much money when I graduate in a few years. Hell yeah, brother. That's right, you will. Our guys will be commanding a $1.5 trillion military budget and you're blackpilling? Think of Gundo. We haven't talked about Gundo in way too long. Remember the Gundo boys? Yeah, those Gundo boys, things just got way more competitive for them. There's going to be a hell of a lot of money for them to swim around in. And, as Kingless Kingdom says, if you don't comply, Donald J. Trump is going to kill you. You are going to be killed personally by a handsome gentleman named Donald John Trump if you don't comply. So Sightbringer here, one of these, it's obviously AI writing. I don't know if it's a person or what, but I'm sure there's a person behind it. But has interesting insights. This is a war economy blueprint disguised as a growth plan. Trump is fusing monetary policy, trade war mechanics, and industrial production into one operating system with military supremacy as the terminal function. He's not rebuilding the military, he's rebooting the American empire. Every signal is recursive. Tariffs become capital controls, defense spending becomes employment stimulus, debt becomes a weapon, not a liability. Inflation becomes a tolerated side effect of sovereign projection. This doctrine doesn't try to stabilize global order, it monetizes disorder. The military becomes a dual-purpose machine, outward-facing deterrence and inward-facing cohesion. It absorbs economic slack and converts it into perceived strength. The dollar's credibility will no longer rest on fiscal prudence or market openness. It will rest on overwhelming deterrence, energy control, and trade enforcement. The end game is compliance. This is how hegemonic transitions are resisted. Through fiscal military ignition, narrative compression, and engineered escalation. Trump is not improvising, he is encoding force into the monetary substrate. There is no neutrality left. You're either inside this ignition arc or outside its protection. The walls are realigning, the empire is rearming, the countdown has already begun. I don't know about you guys, but my favorite AIs are the Patriot AIs. Yes, Zoomer Dylan, our Patriot AI slop. This is the kind of AI that I want to read. Give me just bright, shining patriotism, scorching out of the letters. Patriot GPT. Then he also followed it up with this one. Remember, for all of those big NATO fans, the president did, by the way, for all those big NATO fans, they were at 2% GDP and most weren't paying their bills until I came along. The USA was foolishly paying for them. I respectfully got them to 5% GDP, and they pay immediately. Everyone said that it couldn't be done, but it could, because beyond all else, they're all my friends. Without my involvement, Russia would have all of Ukraine right now. Remember, also, I single-handedly ended 8 wars, and Norway, a NATO member, foolishly chose not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize. The Nobel Peace Prize. So you didn't give it to me, so the name doesn't even matter anymore. But that doesn't matter. What does matter is that I saved millions of lives. Russia and China have zero fear of NATO without the United States, and I doubt NATO would be there for us if we really needed them. Everyone is lucky that I rebuilt our military in my first term and continue to do so. We will always be there for NATO, even if they won't be there for us. The only nation that China and Russia fear and respect is the DJT rebuilt USA, Make America Great Again, President DJT. He is dunking on all of his enemies. He's swinging his nuts in front of everyone who said he couldn't do it. More from our Patriot AI slop. This is the moment NATO died in the American subconscious. This post is the burial. Trump doesn't just question NATO's loyalty, he strips it of ontological legitimacy. He rewrites its meaning entirely. NATO is no longer a sacred covenant, it's an ungrateful tenant on American property. It exists because America has not yet evicted it. He frames deterrence as personal credit, security as a favor extended, peace as a gift he gave. There is no we in this architecture. Only Trump and those who either benefited from him or failed to repay him. He builds an inverse Article 5. If the US is attacked, NATO might hesitate. If Europe is attacked, Trump will decide. That decision is not bound by treaty, it is bound by mood, by deal structure, by whether they paid. This is not a bluff, it's a new reality already in motion. Foreign capitals are adjusting. Diplomats are speaking in contingency tones. Defense ministries are accelerating rearmament not to match Russia, but to prepare for post-American NATO. In this new geometry, alliances are rented, not sworn. Deterrence is a subscription, protection is loyalty gated. The hidden core of this message is dominance. I doubt NATO would be there for us is not a lament, it is a test of dependence. It dares NATO to prove it still exists when Trump stops believing in it. He doesn't withdraw from NATO, he dematerializes it. He replaces it with his own gravitational field. Everyone now orbits that field, whether they admit it or not. This post is the replacement of Article 5 with Article Trump. You are defended as long as you are useful, deferential, and paid up. Otherwise, you are on your own. Patriot GPT! That's my president. That's the man I voted for 17 times. Article 47, the law of Donald Trump mechanics. I wish I had my soundboard. Quantum mechanics, the secrets of the universe. The U.S. is preparing an agreement with Greenland to strengthen its military presence. From The Economist. Trump has already instructed the administration to work out options for strengthening American influence on the island. According to the publication, it's not about direct annexation, but about a political and military agreement that will allow the U.S. to more freely deploy troops and deploy troops. We're not calling them troops anymore. We're calling them trumps. Just an army of eggplants streaming across the glacier. My president is coming to fuck you guys. According to the publication, it's not about direct annexation, but about a political and military agreement that will allow the U.S. to more freely deploy troops and expand military infrastructure, potentially, without the direct participation of Denmark. One of the possible scenarios is the Compact of Free Association, or COFA, a format of agreement that the U.S. uses with Pacific Island states. It provides for the free activities of American armed forces and trade preferences. Washington is simultaneously fueling the movement for Greenland's independence, trying to deepen the rift between Nuuk and Copenhagen. There are also reports of intensified U.S. intelligence in the search for local politicians loyal to America. Denmark and European countries are shocked by Trump's rhetoric. The premiers of Greenland and Denmark have publicly rejected any hints of changing the island's status, and EU and NATO countries have declared their support for sovereignty. Experts note... what did the experts say? The seizure or actual control over Greenland could split NATO and the EU even more than the issue of Ukraine and create an unprecedented crisis within the alliance. And Balding's World here said, Trump has this amazing ability to completely reset the conversation, fall back to probably a preferred position, and then get his critics to criticize him for not going even further. Take trade. For the longest time, there was shock and horror that the U.S. would impose tariffs at all, then impose tariffs on allies. Now probably the biggest critics are that he caved to China by raising tariffs to 35% and doesn't have even higher tariffs than he does after falling back from the threatened 100%. Same process at play here. Total reset of the conversation, falling back to what was probably a preferred position internally from the outset. This negotiation strategy does have drawbacks, but it's amazing how consistently it works and sucks his critics into criticizing either A, positions that are widely recognized as just absurd, international law as an example, or B, criticizing him for not going even after, for instance, or even going further, even after, for instance, nearly doubling Chinese tariffs. My president is a master negotiator, master antagonizer. Eventually, Trump derangement syndrome comes for many, but not the loyal truesters. The truesters are completely impervious to the wiles of TDS. Huntsman here says, Geiger Capital had said, it's time to take back full control of the single most important geopolitical asset in the Western Hemisphere. It's our canal. We built it. Huntsman says the connective tissue shared by nearly all of the major geopolitical challenges that President Trump must contend with is the U.S.'s pivot during 1977 to 1980 from beneficent hegemon, Pax Americana, to the unsteady and moralistic suicidal empathy of the Carter administration. Just during his brief 4 years, Jimmy Carter ceded the Panama Canal, badly fumbled the Iranian Revolution and hostage crisis, created the conditions for GWAT by initiating covert support for the Mujahideen in the wake of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, thus empowering Osama bin Laden and the Taliban, normalized full economic and political relations with China, including granting most favored nations trade status, while severing overt U.S. support for Taiwan, instituted the Carter Doctrine, which designated defense of the Persian Gulf as a paramount U.S. national security interest, firmly rooting U.S. investment in foreign entanglements to one of the most volatile regions of the world. Placed naive moralism ahead of cold-blooded strategic calculus in U.S. relations with Latin American countries, opening fissures and vulnerabilities that worsened in subsequent decades, thus ultimately debasing U.S. influence in our backyard, or how the Belt and Road chickens came home to roost. However, In a delicious bit of irony, it was Carter's 1979 use of the recently enacted International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977, or IEPA.
Welcome to the Gulag. If you survive, you earn your freedom.
Thank you, Bobby Ballbags, and welcome again to Trust Plan SAR, a new Kick subscriber. I would play something for you on the soundboard, but I have no soundboard today for some reason. So it was Carter's 1979 use of IEPA to levy sanctions against Iran that laid the foundational predicate for President Trump's expanded use of IEPA to combat so many of these current long tails of Carter's principled fecklessness. Note that this doesn't mean SCOTUS won't curtail or judiciously constrain IEPA powers. I believe the president is in the right here and will ultimately prevail at SCOTUS, while also having zero specific knowledge. But there is definitively a straight line between the manner in which Carter invoked IEPA, judicial deference over the decades hence, and President Trump's use of IEPA in 45 and 47. That is apparently the Supreme Court is going to be handing down their opinion on that tomorrow, on the issue with the tariffs. So we'll see what happens. I suspect that they're going to maybe sort of constrain some things around the margins, but ultimately is going to be largely a win. That's my guess. We'll see what happens. So he posted all that, and then Blizzox here says, Pax Americanus is the kind of ideology that gets you nuked. And I have to include this because I'm about to read to you a digital curb stomping. Listen to this from Huntsman. Strong talk from the subject of a country the size of Maryland, with a GDP equal to Michigan, a military the size of Connecticut, and an arsenal of 0 nuclear weapons. The U.S. Department of Commerce controls a fleet of ships 3 times larger than your entire Navy. You'd probably lose a maritime conflict to Somalian pirates. The only reason NATO is located there is because the actual powers that make up NATO found Belgium to be so inoffensive that it was an acceptable compromise after France threw a hissy fit and withdrew temporarily from the organization. Your nation is a vassal state that exists as a quirk of geopolitical fate, has 3 official languages despite its small population, and whose largest company is a beer conglomerate that has only 2% of its workforce in the country. Congratulations on being Europe's waffle-shaped appendix. That's the sort of thing that... I forgot I even sent this. Holy hell, I have stumbled upon a curb stomping. Also, make me a waffle, bitch. The adults are talking right now. Can't dodge the fraud. Belgium is not a nation. My president is going to be taking nation status away from Belgium. We're going to send our Somalians to defeat them. He's going to conquer Belgium with Somalians. An army of pirates. Look at this here. Today, from Marco Rubio, President Trump announced the U.S. is leaving 66 anti-American, useless, or wasteful international organizations. Review of additional international organizations remains ongoing. These withdrawals keep a key promise President Trump made to Americans. We will stop subsidizing globalist bureaucrats who act against our interests. The Trump administration will always put America and Americans first. Look at this list. Full list of organizations the U.S. is leaving. One look is enough to see that all these organizations exist solely as gravy trains for elites and self-important globalist grifters. The 24/7 Carbon-Free Energy Compact, the Colombo Plan Council, the Commission for Environmental Cooperation. Education cannot wait. European Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats. Forum of European National Highway Research Laboratories. Freedom Online Coalition. Global Community Engagement and Resilience Fund. Global Counterterrorism Forum. Global Forum on Cyber Expertise. Global Forum on Migration and Development. Intergovernmental Forums. Intergovernmental Science-Only Policy Platform. International Center for the Study of the Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Property. The International Cotton Advisory Committee. International Energy Forum. International Tropical Timber Organization. The Pan American Institute of Geography and History. The Regional Cooperation Agreement on Combating Piracy and Armed Robbery Against Ships in Asia. The Science and Technology Center in Ukraine. There's a very interesting one. The Venice Commission of the Council of Europe. ECOSOX. International Law Commission. Office of the Special Advisor on Africa. The Peace Building Fund. The Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. And a whole bunch of UN organizations. Just one move. Foomp. See ya, bitches. We're out. I am now halfway through the tabs that I have prepared for today. My president has been a busy man, an extraordinarily busy man. And those of us who have been loyal, trusting patriots from the beginning are getting our just reward. It feels even better to us than it does to those who are begrudgingly beginning to recognize that we were right, that we are winning, that President Trump is dedicated to making America great again, and that all of the panicans are a bunch of fucking losers. Sorry, I had to fix something over here. God, I love winning. It's so good. I'll take the yeah, you were right. I'll take that anytime anyone wants to offer that. I love being right. U.S. Department of Labor. We continue. Globalist economic policies have inflicted catastrophic damage on our nation. Decades of unrestrained migration, endless offshoring of jobs, and a system that put foreign workers first resulted in American-born workers having jobs and opportunities stolen from them. Now, the tide is turning. Under President Trump's leadership, all net job growth is going to American-born workers. We're ending rampant visa fraud, and historic investments are pouring into our nation. There's a lot of progress to make in our fight to fix decades of globalist damage, but the future of our homeland is brighter now that patriots are in control. May God bless America. Americanism will prevail. The empire rises. I never expected that I was going to get a Kino posting Department of Labor account. If I'd known that I could vote for that, I might have voted for that alone. Trust the plan. Trust Trump. Look at this. Ah! Trust the plan. Department of Labor is saying trust the plan. We live in the best time. Patriots are fully in control. Only thing that would have made this better would have been if they would have switched the U's out for V's. Trust the plan, trust Trump. Now we need to pivot to not just trust Trump, but trust the Trump. We're not going to be electing J.D. Vance as president. We're going to be electing J.D. Vance as Trump. He's going to be Trump 2. After him will be Trump 3. After him will be Trump 4. After him will be Trump 5. Trump V. So it begins. Anna Paulina Luna. I have formally made a motion to subpoena Neville Singham, an American billionaire with ties to the CCP, and Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO of the ADL, for labeling America First as hate speech and TPUSA as a hate group. Bring them in and make them testify before the American people. GOP oversight will be voting to send the subpoenas in a few hours. She's making a motion to subpoena Jonathan Greenblatt for engaging in hate speech. If Congress is going to be useless like this. She also says, today I refer to any and every criminal found guilty of fraud regarding Minnesota fraud scheme to be denaturalized and sent for detainment in El Salvador's high-security prison, CCOT. U.S. citizenship is a privilege, not a right, and according to legal statute, any person found guilty of fraud within the first 10 years of being naturalized can be legally denaturalized. I take defrauding the American people very seriously. This is a zero-tolerance policy. Imagine what good Thomas Massie could be doing. Kelly Loeffler, small business administrator. She says, our investigation in Minnesota, which has so far resulted in 6,900 suspended borrowers, extremely nice, has given us the blueprint to pursue pandemic-era abuse across every state. Do you know how many Hellcats are about to get repossessed? Under the Trump admin, our work won't stop until fraudsters face real accountability and taxpayers are made whole.
We're here with SBA Administrator Kelly Loeffler here at the White House. Administrator, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here at Frontlines Turning Point USA.
Well, it's a real honor, and I look forward to the conversation.
So just to start out, we've seen thousands of loans being taken out in Minnesota specifically, totaling up to $400 million. These were pandemic-era PPP, EIDL loans as well. Can you tell us about what your reaction was when you were going through this investigation, seeing this firsthand?
Well, first of all, at the SBA, it is truly a new day under the Trump administration. So we came in, immediately got to work on busting up fraud, and we knew that there was about potentially $200 billion billion worth of fraud in the former PPP EIDL programs. Well, when the Minnesota fraud came to light, we immediately got to work, drilled down on Minnesota specifically, found thousands and thousands of loans that were flagged as fraudulent. We went in, blocked 7,000 people from ever doing business again with the SBA. Those loans totaled $430 million, and now we're sending those files over to federal law enforcement for prosecution.
So these are PPP loans. These are pandemic-era loans, EIDL loans. Is this different from what we're seeing in Minnesota as uncovered recently by independent journalist Nick Shirley? Are you going to be looking into that as well as far as those Somali daycare centers and all that?
Well, this is all part of what appears to be virtually an organized crime ring. I mean, when you look at the depth of crime and the scale and how long it's been going on, this is all part of a program to defraud the federal government and steal taxpayer dollars from hardworking Americans. So it's just part and parcel of what's going on.
Note that phrasing. She said an organized crime ring. This is an organized crime ring built around fraud. Just remember that.
PPP was not part of our welfare program, that the $1 trillion that the federal government puts out every year through 80 programs. We need to make sure that we are looking at those programs closely. But this was COVID-era fraud, that we have to make sure that those who defrauded the government and our taxpayers during the toughest times never get to do business with our agency again.
Now, what's the timeline on something like this? Because you're dealt with, hefty amounts of dollars, hefty amounts of these loans, hefty amounts of people who are allegedly participating in such fraudulent activity. What's kind of the timeline as far as prosecuting these people and consequences?
Well, we'll leave that to our federal law enforcement partners. Our work was to get to work as quickly as possible. So we found this out Thanksgiving weekend. By Christmas, we had notified Governor Walz that the SBA was defunding any further efforts within Minnesota. And so we have moved so quickly. And now we have the blueprint in place to go across the country and go state by state and find those people, those bad actors who, whether acting independently or as part of an organized crime operation, to make sure that they never access our resources and potentially other resources across the federal government, because the American taxpayer deserves these answers quickly.
And I'm sure we'll be seeing more, as that comes out. Now that you have the blueprint out, I'm sure we'll be seeing more from your administration across the entire country in these blue states like Washington State as well.
Yeah, I can't tell if she's really... I think she is pretty tall. I wonder if we could just find out. How tall is Kelly Loeffler? Well, IMDb says that she's 5'11". But when she was a freshman, she sprouted to 5'10", making one of the taller players at her high school in rural Illinois. She played for the WNBA? Hold on a second. Kelly Loeffler, WNBA. This is lore that I'm just discovering now? Let's see, early career. She was a lawyer. Got her MBA. Bought a minority stake in the Atlanta Dream of the WNBA. Okay, so she owned WNBA. She was forced to sell due in part to her stance on the Black Lives Matter movement. Interesting. So I don't think she actually played. She just happens to be really tall, and she also owned a team. Okay.
As well, and maybe some of the other states, especially during COVID, and especially as more is coming out in Minnesota. So now that we're in 2026, what are some of the goals that the SBA has moving forward?
Well, we're going to continue the strong framework that we built in 2025.
Women are getting bigger.
The Trump SBA is first about empowering the private sector that had been so disrespected by the Biden administration. They drove up inflation, drove wage growth down. They hurt the American worker, small businesses. So we're restoring that confidence through our programs, through the support, and finally deregulating, because the Biden administration, while they were pushing down the small business community and propping up the federal government, they excessively regulated small businesses. So we're helping lead a White House task force it's really called a strike force, to strike out just thousands of regulations, because we saw that in the first year of this president's great first year term, that he was able to eliminate about 120 regulations for every new regulation. So we're going to keep doing that, get off the backs of the American people.
It was actually closer to 130. I haven't seen a lot of people bringing that up, but last year, throughout 2025, Trump had introduced this. I think it was supposed to do like 10 for every one. That every new regulation introduced, they have to remove 10. They removed 129 for every one new one that they introduced. Now, note that she said they've discovered all this fraud and they've sent it over to the DOJ for prosecution. Now, you'd be like, we want this prosecuted really quickly, right? Well, here's what the DOJ is having to deal with. 125 attorneys in the Southern District of New York out of maybe 500 and 400 across DOJ, the ranks of which are already reduced by resignations and terminations it's working hard to fill, are now spending much of their time reviewing nearly 2 million separate documents as part of the Epstein file for purposes of releasing them. This process will take months, if not years. There simply aren't enough sets of eyes to comply with Massey's stupid bill. This could have been explained to anyone who took the time to inquire. Each document has to be read individually, redacted if necessary, and then reviewed to make sure the redactions conform to the statute and orders of the court regarding victim privacy interests. Those complaining about the deadline having passed can continue all you want. There is no alternative process that's going to get it done faster. But you have accomplished one goal of the Democrats. About 5% of all DOJ attorneys are tied up doing something other than advancing President Trump's policies. And then Varad Mehta here said, this dumbass Massey tying down DOJ like this on his damn fool idealistic crusade and thus preventing it from advancing Trump's agenda should be a major line of attack against him by his opponent in the primary. Totally done with Thomas Massey. We need no more from Thomas Massey. Time for him to start his podcast career. Shipwreck Crew said, did Thomas Massey, Nancy Grace, which is funny, I don't know if this was done on purpose or not, Nancy Grace, Lauren Boebert and MTG all secretly desire, along with 214 Democrats, to have 400 DOJ lawyers tied down reviewing documents from an investigation going back nearly 20 years, which keeps those 400 lawyers from advancing and defending the new policies of the Trump admin? I'm 100% sure that was the motive of the 214 Democrats they joined, and that has been the outcome. Whose side are they on? Not on America's side. It's now official. The federal government is investigating hundreds of millions of Somali dollars leaving through the Minneapolis airport. Listen to this.
What are these cash transfers? There are Somali couriers who come to the airport almost daily with $1,600,000 in cash and a luggage. That sounds a little suspicious, right? It was going on daily, and they were moving about $350 million a year in cash in their luggage out of Minneapolis airport, and then traditionally or predominantly overseas. One of the routes that the TSA saw the money go, it would go from Minneapolis to Europe to Dubai, often through Amsterdam. It was flagged for years. TSA was flagging these payments for years. They grew from $20-30 million a year to $350 million a year the last 2 years, 2024 and 2025. It was literally a foreign ATM taking cash out of the United States to foreign destinations, and we don't know the reason why. But that is now under investigation by the FBI and HSI. And people say, well, is this normal?
No, not at all. $350 million a year in cash being moved through the Minneapolis airport. This is not total money coming out of Minneapolis or coming out of Minnesota. This is the amount of cash that was being flown out of the country in like briefcases and boxes going through the airport. And TSA was documenting all of this, and it was just being waved on through. So, finding the fraud from the Homeland Security account under the leadership of Secretary Noem, Homeland Security investigators are going door to door, collecting evidence and investigating fraud in Minneapolis and across the country. HSI will leave no stone unturned. The Trump administration will follow the law and is not afraid to use denaturalization and deportation. If you are complicit in defrauding the American people, your days are numbered. And I'll just point out on this video, if you can, note the backs of some of these jackets. Isn't that an interesting thing to see there? Remember when we heard about Scott Bessent taking a bunch of IRS agents and dedicating them to immigration enforcement? Well, here you go. IRS, FBI, FBI, more FBI, HSI, more IRS, IRS has always had armed agents, but now they have more. Well, hey, send them after the Somalis. There you go. Yeah, they're also all white, too. Isn't that interesting? That one chick had like the jeans she's wearing combined with the hair and the shoes looks like a throwback to like when I was in college. This chick here, she's got like the blonde hair, looks like extensions or something. She's like totally looks out of place for the time she's in. Just in, Secretary Scott Bessent is now moving to ban anyone that receives government assistance from wiring money out of the country after Somali fraudsters were caught in Minnesota. Here is an Aristofag sighting.
So we're lowering that to 3,000,
good.
and we're also targeting the 2 counties here, and we're going to do enhanced surveillance. And from now on, anyone who wires money out from one of these money service businesses has to check a box saying whether they are on public assistance. And if you are on public assistance, we are going to start pushing that you cannot wire money out of the country.
Oh, gosh. Well, what if they lie and they don't tell us for public assistance?
Well, then
That's a crime, lying on a federal form.
We're going to follow it up, and we are going to push that you can no longer do that. The American people, our generosity has been taken advantage of.
Our generosity is funding al-Shabaab, an Iranian interest it could be.
Well, the money.
I mean, this is really bad.
The money is supposed to go for alleged asylum seekers and their families and children. And if you are wiring the money out of the country, one of 2 things must be true. You are getting too much money and your benefits should be cut, or you are part of this conspiracy. Where did that money come from? We're going to find it out. That's what Treasury does. IRS has a group called Criminal Investigations. Criminal Investigations was the group.
So, again, he says, you're part of this conspiracy, this organized conspiracy to defraud the American people using government, using tax dollars and sending it out of the country. Well, here, this is interesting because Elon Musk, Secretary Bessent is right. It looks like the Aristofag has successfully bludgeoned Elon Musk into subservience. Scott Bessent just confirmed up to $600 billion of annual fraud with taxpayer dollars, nearly 10% of spending, which I think this is probably still understating it.
The IRS called Criminal Investigations, and these men and women, they are cool cats. They can take apart a balance sheet and they can knock down a door and arrest someone. Like, they go out on patrols, they can make arrests. It's this very interesting hybrid force, about 2,500 of them, and they led the charge here. So it was IRS CIs who they uncovered the initial fraud and the prosecutions. So it's with that group, with other groups at IRS, and with the powers of the Treasury to track where the money came from, where it's going. We saw this very unsettling news yesterday that
Miles Sanders says, I can't believe this gay-ass nigga punched the most autistic man on earth. What a king. Niles Pritchard thinks he might be gay for him. No homo. That's an extremely straight sentiment to have. I've consulted with good friend of the show, Perry Abbasi, and he confirmed that feeling gay for Scott Bessent actually is a sign that you're extremely straight.
Many people involved here with the administration of these programs have tried to go back and they recreate documents, change documents, and we're not going to have that. We are going to hold people accountable. We're going to press this to the full extent possible. And like I said, I think that this may just be, it's a cold day outside, so this could be the tip of the iceberg here in Minnesota. But it's probably may not be as prevalent, but the dollars may be bigger and larger in other states. And just to put this in perspective for American taxpayers, for American families, the GAO, the General Accounting Office, believes that there is somewhere between 300 and 600 billion of annual fraud, roughly 10% of government spending that disappears due to fraud. If we can recapture that, that is 1 to 2% of GDP.
1 to 2% of GDP on fraud alone. And I guarantee you he's understating it. I guarantee you in his own mind he knows he's understating it. That the actual numbers are just unfathomable. You wouldn't even be taken seriously if you said the actual numbers. So the watcher on the web here says, everybody understand what's going on with Walz, right? The 2020 Democrats are behind by a huge margin in fundraising. Kamala needs to pick a VP, and it just so happens that Tim has access to one of the nation's largest money laundering for political profit schemes. And then magically, gee, would you look at that? Suddenly they're not having so much of a fundraising problem anymore. Only they lost, and now the fraud that facilitated the money laundering is out in the open. Dude's going down, and there's a good chance he's bringing a large chunk of the Democratic Party with him. This is what Caroline Leavitt reports.
The great people.
And remember, I said, with a couple of these now, I've said that they're using this phrase. They're talking about this organized conspiracy, this crime ring.
Of Minnesota, a state that was once known as the land of 10,000 lakes, has been turned into the land of 10,000 Somali schemes because of their governor. And don't forget, this is a guy who was at the top of the Democrat Party's ticket, the number 2. He was Kamala Harris's running mate just about a year ago until President Trump crushed them last November. And it was in large part because the president was calling out this fraud. And so this has been a day one priority for the Trump administration, Jesse. The Department of Justice has convicted and prosecuted nearly 100 defendants in Minnesota. And because of these new details and this new reporting that has come to light, this is a all hands on deck across the entire government effort. We are surging resources. You saw today the Department of Homeland Security announced we have nearly 2,000 agents from the Homeland Security Investigations Team. The FBI is on the ground, and we're freezing money. HHS cut off funding for child care centers and for daycares. USDA Secretary Rollins has been asking Governor Walz to see the recipients of SNAP in his state. So this is all hands on deck. Rest assured, it's a top priority for President Trump. And he believes that Governor Walz is criminally liable. And I think the Department of Justice is going to find out.
He believes, so Trump believes that Tim Walz is criminally liable, says the spokesperson for the White House. Well, as tensions explode in Minnesota between ICE and leftist rioters, Trump drops the hammer. You guys are talking about Scott Bessent's hammer? Trump is dropping the hammer.
My fellow Americans, it is with overwhelming enthusiasm that I am declaring that anyone who protests or interferes with ICE and their operations is officially gay, big time. With that being said, go ahead and call your dads, tell them about your alternative lifestyle as a gay communist. And then, who knows, maybe eat a lollipop. I don't know what flamers do with their time, but I'd imagine it's something along those lines. Maybe decorate a bathroom, who knows? In either case, this is who you are now, and everybody knows it. Cat's out of the bag. Cat is out of the bag.
You're gay! My president said so. So Ann Vandersteel says, in case you're missing it, we're currently in the midst of a soft insurrection. The hotel that canceled the ICE agents' reservations. Did you guys hear this story? Did you hear about the Hampton Inn by Hilton in Lakeville, Minnesota, that canceled ICE agents' reservations and doxed them? It is owned and operated by Everpeak Hospitality as an independent franchisee. Public filings show the company is owned by a group of 4 Indian partners: Parmeet Singh, Amanpreet Hundal, Karandeep Nagra, and Mohinderjeet Kaur. The dude's name is Mohinderjeet. What the? How are these people real? How do they actually exist? How do you have a child born and you look at it and you say, his name is Mohinderjeet? I cannot exist in the same world as these people. They need to be on the other side of a very large mountain range or something. Just across an ocean. If you look at a little baby and you say, his name needs to be Mohinderjeet, we are not going to share a polity. They are the ones who allowed this atrocity to happen in our country. The very idea that a Hilton franchisee would feel free to cancel ICE agent or DHS reservations in defiance of the duly elected president is unconscionable. Protesters are calling on all hotels not to allow agents to stay on their properties. Shit's really, it's pretty clear now that Minnesota is once again going to be where all of the happening happens. America's circling the drain because our fake immigration system was really just an invasion scheme. These foreign owners think they can undermine our laws while profiting off our land. DHS should seize that hotel and turn it into a detention center. Trump won. Time to stop pussyfooting around. Arrest any and all imported elites and elected officials who confuse protest with treason. I like your spirit, Ann Vandersteel. I said how it started. Look at this. This email is in regard to the reservation you made with the Hampton Inn Lakeville property. We have noticed an influx of .gov reservations made today that have been for DHS, and we are not allowing any ICE or immigration agents to stay at our property. If you are with DHS or immigration, let us know, as we will have to cancel your reservation. Please pass on this info to your coworkers that we are not allowing any immigration agents to house on our property. Are we going to get a Fourth Amendment lawsuit here soon? After further investigation online, we found information about immigration were connected with your name, and we'll be canceling your upcoming reservation. You should see a proper cancellation email in your inbox shortly from Hilton. So they went and searched the person online and found that they're connected to immigration work, so they canceled their reservation. What happened next? Oopsies! No more Hampton Inn by Hilton. It got squished. Hilton Hotels revokes franchise license to Minnesota Hotel, which refused service to ICE agents. They got their franchise license pulled. As Lomez says, corporate compliance is good. Hilton didn't even have to be told. They just did it on their own. This absolutely would not have happened during Trump 1. They are bending the knee. Huntsman says, Trench and Insight, consider how far we've come. In 2020, companies taking automatic actions to reduce risk of DEI mob demands enforced by DOJ. In 2026, companies taking automatic actions to reduce risk of chimping by anons and righty media. Feels good, man. I did say that this would start to happen. I mean, once you understand how mass psychology works, once you understand the fact that the vast majority of people are simply compliant to power, and you just have to project power. If you project power, a much larger contingent of people than you expect will simply bend the knee because you are projecting power. This is why you can just do things. We are winning so hard. That means there's going to be some sort of we've had this experience before. We've gone through these cycles. We're winning. Oh, man, that sucks. We're winning. Oh, man, that sucks. Oh, man, that sucks. Oh, man, that sucks. You got to get a few big, oh, man, that sucks in. And a whole bunch of dudes just absolutely pussy the fuck out. They just bend the knee immediately. Oh, that's right. We're actually losing and it's all over and Trump betrayed us and the Jews win. They are capitulating to what they perceive as power when they do that. When you nothing ever happens post, when you doom post, when you fag out on the timeline, when you start trooning out because Trump betrayed you, you are bending the knee to Jewish power. Full stop. That's why they run these big influence campaigns, because they want you to capitulate. They are happy to get you to hop your way off of the Trump train any way possible. And if you prove that you're just so incredibly based because you tell the entire world just how based you are and you make sure you use all the right slurs so everyone can be so impressed at how based you are, you project an incredibly easy mental model to hack. Oh, that's right, you are so based. You're so based that Trump isn't the man for you, man. You just gotta opt out. You gotta try again in the future. Trump betrayed you. You're too based for Trump. You better abandon your president. Not me. Not me and mine. No. Labians are never going to abandon our president. Our president sent BORTAC into Minnesota. These guys aren't ICE, they're much worse. CBP, and judging from the patches, BORTAC. BORTAC is a special ops counterterrorism tactical unit of CBP. Look at these boys. BORTAC Patriots standing by. Border Patrol Special Operations Group shared a picture of Forward Observations Group PMC training in Texas. And look at this. Look at this little patch. These are the types of dudes that are in BORTAC. Yeah, these are Sicario-ass niggas. Those are the people who are in Minnesota now. Minneapolis yearns for the Black Sun BORTAC bros to clear out the illegals and criminal Antifa. Send amendments to President! Let's go! We got BORTAC boys with Black Sun patches in Minnesota. Tim Walz, you're getting it up the pooper, and not in the way that you like. Here you go. This is why I said, this right here was building up to this. This is why I kept saying, note how you keep hearing this from each of these members of the administration. A nationwide fraud ring from the vice president himself.
If you look at the amount of fraud in the welfare system, according to the statistics I've seen, 85% of Somalians who are in the United States, legal and illegal, are collecting some form of welfare benefits. So that's not to disparage the other 15%, but when you're at 85% of a population that is collecting welfare, that suggests that we have really done something wrong with regards to vetting, and that's the fundamental issue. Even if there's no fraud, 85% collecting welfare is way too many damn people collecting welfare, getting rich off the American taxpayer while a lot of Americans struggle. That's unacceptable. What's going on in Minneapolis, I think, is actually representative of a broader fraud scheme that we're going to see all over the country. We're going to see it in California. We're going to see it in other places too, where people get rich from the American taxpayer. The Somalian fraud, for example, daycare fraud. You've got Americans, we've got programs set up to make it easier for Americans to get their kids in daycare so they can have proper child care. You take that money and you siphon it off to Somalian fraudsters, that's a double theft. Number one, that means a lot of American families can't afford their child care. Number two, that means a lot of American taxpayers are being fleeced. It's totally unacceptable. I believe, Jesse, we're going to have some very big announcements on this stuff in the next couple of days. I don't want to get ahead of the president on anything, but we believe that there is a nationwide fraud ring that's rooted in rooted in illegal aliens and others taking advantage of the American welfare system. We're going to get to the root of it, and anybody who's involved is going to get prosecuted.
Big announcements coming in the next few days from our president about a nationwide organized crime ring executing fraud by scamming American taxpayer dollars. And it just so happens that now everything's kicking off all of a sudden in Minnesota. Look at all the different agencies that are now present, investigating. In the streets, you got the IRS, you got DHS, you got SBA, you've got DOJ, you've got BORTAC, you got CBP, you got ICE. You got all sorts of different agencies all descending on Minnesota as Minnesota is signaling that they're ready to have this fight. Now, we got to make sure we catch this quick little clip here of our vice president mogging the Aryan Chad, Gavin Newsom, for being a fag.
Newsom obviously running for president. Have you seen this guy cross his legs? Have you ever seen anyone cross their legs like that?
My legs don't cross like that, Jesse. I'll leave. You can interpret that however you want to.
My vice president's got big balls. Doge isn't the only big balls in the administration. So Vice President J.D. Vance announces a new assistant attorney general position whose entire job will be investigating fraud. Perhaps this is one of those very big announcements.
What is that going on there? Is that normal? Okay. CNN installed this broken camera just to throw me off my game, but it's not going to work. So here's the simple fact here. If you're a young parent struggling to afford childcare in the United States of America, there are programs that we have to make it easier for your kids to get in daycare, for your kids to get in preschool. Those programs should go to American citizens, not be defrauded by Somali immigrants and others. Make it hard for you to get the access to the resources you need. But number two, making it easier for people who shouldn't even be in this country to fleece the United States and our taxpayers to begin with. We have actually activated a major interagency task force to make it possible to get to the heart of this fraud. We have Department of Agriculture resources that are focused on SNAP fraud, so that people who need food benefits can get them, but illegal aliens and other fraudsters don't. We have over 1,500 subpoenas that the Department of Justice has issued to get to the heart of the fraud ring. We've done almost 100 indictments, mostly Somali immigrants, but also a few others. And of course, we're looking in with broad investigatory authority to a number of the instances of wrongdoing that we've seen in Minneapolis. But we also want to expand this. We know that the fraud isn't just happening in Minneapolis, it's also happening in states like Ohio. It's happening in states like California. And so what we're doing in order to help coordinate this remarkable interagency effort from the Trump administration, but also to make sure that we prosecute the bad guys and do it as swiftly and efficiently as possible, is we are creating a new Assistant Attorney General position who will have nationwide jurisdiction over the issue of fraud. Now, of course, that person's efforts will start.
Yeah, Mr. Buttpoop says JD being involved in this as the fix-it guy will be very good for us in 2028. The fact that they're having him run point on the messaging on this, as they have been thus far, if they continue to do this, it's adds yet another layer to the extreme competence of this administration.
And focus primarily in Minnesota, but it is going to be a nationwide effort because, unfortunately, the American people have been defrauded in a very nationwide way. I want to thank a couple of people for their cooperation, in particular Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, first of all, for getting a lot of resources to Minneapolis to start to investigate and prosecute this fraud, really at an industrial scale. We've never seen fraud like this in the history of our country. Pam has been doing a great job to get the resources there to uncover it, but importantly, creating a job like this often takes months, sometimes even longer. When we realized that we needed this Associate Attorney General position, Pam got this person up and running in about a week. We're going to make the nomination hopefully in the next few days. We'll obviously let you guys know who that is when we do it. I've talked to Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who has promised me swift confirmation for this official, but this is the person who is going to make sure that we stop defrauding the American people.
They're literally creating a division of the DOJ specifically to investigate Somali fraud schemes. Specifically to go after Tim Walz and the Jacob Frey or Fry or however the fucking faggot who's the mayor of Minneapolis. And he's already said that, because my first thought when I heard this is, oh, okay, so they got to try to get this Assistant Attorney General through the Senate. But if they've already got John Thune on board with this, we're going to have an entire division of the DOJ specifically dedicated to investigating our opponents.
Here's one final thing I'll say about this. I've heard a lot of people say that we need a special counsel to investigate fraud in the United States of America. I actually agree, and that's what this position does. It has all the benefits, all the resources, all the authority of a special counsel, but with two crucial differences. Number one, it will be run out of the White House under the supervision of me and the President of the United States. And number two,
it will be run with direct supervision by Trump and Vance, a division of the DOJ run with direct supervision by the presidential ticket.
It's actually constitutionally legitimate. As you guys may know, the special counsel statute has some major constitutional questions. When we get the bad guys, we want to make sure we get them permanently and they don't have some legal technicality they can get out of, which is why we set it up as an Associate Attorney General.
An Associate Attorney General. And then what was this clip here? Yeah, this is, so you guys have seen I'm sure you've already seen the video of the ICE protester lady who was in her car and she tried to ram the ICE agent and he shot and killed her. And this is like, everyone's calling her George Floyd. I'm sure you guys are already aware of the George Floyd story, so I'm not going to run through all the basics of it. That is essentially the basics. But here, let me back up. So as soon as this happened, it was very clear that this is the sort of moment that they have been agitating for. Antifa, the protesters, the No Kings protests, all that sort of stuff has all been gearing up toward an event like this. They needed their body. They needed their sparking event, which meant they needed to sacrifice someone. They needed to kill someone, drive someone to the point where they would get themselves killed to kick off this whole thing. And so my first thought when I saw the story starting to come down, I was kind of watching it, checking in and out as I was busy doing some other stuff. But as I was starting to watch this go down, I was like, okay, I want to see how the administration responds to this. And they've been Johnny on the spot. I've got a few different things toward that. Then let's watch this video first.
When I was actually walking out here, somebody sent me a photo of a CNN headline about what happened in Minneapolis. And this is the headline. I'm just going to read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills U.S. citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it, and that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And I say attack very, very intentionally, because this was an attack on federal law enforcement, this was an attack on law and order, this was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day.
Get 'em!
What that headline leaves out is the fact that that very ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. like, so you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an automobile? What that headline leaves out is that that woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation in the United States of America. What that headline leaves out is that that woman is part of a broader left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and to make it impossible for our ICE officers to do their job. If the media wants to tell the truth, they ought to tell the truth that a group of left-wing radicals have been working tirelessly, sometimes using domestic terror techniques to try to make it impossible for the President of the United States to do what the American people elected him to do, which is enforce our immigration laws. The President stands with ICE, I stand with ICE, we stand with all of our law enforcement officers. And part of that is recognizing that you people in the media, not everybody in this room, but many people in this room have been lying about this attack. She was trying to ram this guy with her car. He shot back. He defended himself. He's already been seriously wounded in law enforcement operations before, and everybody who's been repeating the lie that this is some innocent woman who was out for a drive in Minneapolis when a law enforcement officer shot at her, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Every single one of you. Questions?
This is just had me euphoric. Perfect framing. They're not letting them run away with this narrative on this. No, they're coming out explicitly right away. We've got our guys back. Because first of all, think about all these different ICE agents who are being pushed up to this limit constantly. As soon as one of their guys shoots and kills someone, I guarantee you the first thing that's going through their mind is like, what's the administration going to do? Are they going to hang us out to dry or are they going to have our back? And JD has been immediately on the front foot. No, 100%. We have his back. He was fully in the right. We fully support and defend what he did. Remember when Obama said that Trayvon Martin, if he'd had a son, he would have looked like Trayvon Martin? This is that, but good. That was wholly inappropriate for a president to say something like that. This is exactly what the president and the vice president should be saying. Trump came out and posted a truce immediately, saying, I watched the video. We fully have his back. We fully support him. She was the aggressor. She was the one who was wrong. It's unfortunate that she died, but that's what happens when you try to attack law enforcement, federal law enforcement, in the course of them doing their jobs. Some righteous anger coming out of our vice president. Now, on X, earlier the morning of the video I just played you, this woman, Star Wars name woman, National Legal Director for ADC, which is the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. I'm a former defense attorney and currently a civil liberties attorney with no political dog in this fight. Sure you don't have a political dog in this fight. I watched the video at least 10 times from different angles and at different speeds and waited to offer an opinion, which I still reserve the right to change if additional information changes the calculus. It's very clear the officers instigated the confrontation. The woman initially tried to wave them past her, and she goes on her screed. Vance, Johnny on the spot, says, this is preposterous. First of all, she's not waving the officers through and has no right to do so, even if she were. She is waving another car through before the officers approach her car. Second, the officers are not randomly searching her. They are approaching her vehicle because she's violating the law. Namely, she's obstructing a law enforcement operation. You're not allowed to walk up to or drive up to people who are enforcing the law to make it harder for them to do their jobs. Third, this defense attorney is drawing a meaningless distinction between an ICE officer and a real police officer. Again, you're not allowed to interrupt a lawful enforcement operation, which is exactly what this woman was doing. Fourth, the officer didn't discharge his weapon to prevent her from fleeing. When he discharged his weapon, she had pointed the vehicle at him and pressed the gas. He discharged his weapon in self-defense, and other angles of the video show the woman clearly hit the officer with her car while accelerating. The gaslighting is off the charts, and I'm having none of it. This guy was doing his job. She tried to stop him from doing his job. When he approached her car, she tried to hit him. A tragedy? Absolutely. But a tragedy that falls on this woman and all of the radicals who teach people that immigration is the one type of law that rioters are allowed to interfere with. And then he went even further. And this is where I saw this and I was like, oh, damn, he's really laying down the gauntlet here. Not only are they trying to avoid this matter, or not only are they not trying to avoid this matter, not only are they trying to just kind of move on from it and try to keep it from becoming too much of an issue. No, he's leaning right into it. He's issuing an ultimatum. Every congressional Democrat and every Democrat who's running for president should be asked a simple question. Do you think the officer was wrong in defending his life against a deranged leftist who tried to run him over? These people are going to try to arrest our law enforcement for doing their jobs. The least the media could do is ask them about it. He's going on the offense. Yeah, Augustine. Not only are we not going to try to avoid this subject, no. This is going to become the defining question. Do you support this guy or not? If you don't support this guy, you're a traitor. You're not fit for office. This is going to be the deciding question that we put to you. They're going to use it as a wedge. Now, I got just a couple more things. Let's see, what do I got here? Yeah, all right. So, kind of lost in all of this that was going on was the, what Miles say? JD Vance, and the JD stands for Just Dance on the Graves of Our Enemies. Yeah. Yeah, if it hadn't been Icy, she would have crushed him. She would have killed him if it hadn't been Icy. He was absolutely justified in shooting her. And I'm honestly looking forward to, as soon as the show is over here, I'm going to go kind of catch up on everything that's been happening, because there's stuff that seems to be kicking off in Iran right now as well. All the things are happening, but kind of lost in all of this was the significance of this January 6th anniversary. Stephen Chung says, "Can't believe MSDNC actually fell for our trap in covering the new January 6th page on the White House website."
And just a few minutes ago, on whitehouse.gov, the official website of the White House and the executive branch of this government, posting an entire timeline in which they are quite explicit in putting blame on Democrats and others for the events that transpired on January 6th and the prosecutions that followed. There are references to the, quote, mass arrests of patriotic protesters. There is a reference to the greatest election theft in U.S. history. Mike Pence's, quote, act of cowardice and sabotage. The website goes on to say that Democrats masterfully reversed reality after January 6th, branding peaceful patriotic protesters as insurrectionists and framing the event as a violent coup attempt orchestrated by Trump, despite no evidence of armed rebellion or intent to overthrow the government. My words, to be clear, there were more than a dozen individuals who were charged and convicted for seditious conspiracy. There's another passage on the website in which it says, quote, it was the Democrats who staged the real insurrection by certifying a fraud-ridden election, ignoring widespread irregularities, and weaponizing federal agencies to hunt down dissenters. Again, that is whitehouse.gov, the official page of the White House, with a new website here on this January 6th.
They actually covered it. So, whitehouse.gov/J6, 1/6/2021. President Trump took decisive action to pardon January 6 defendants who were unfairly targeted, overcharged, and used as political examples. They were not protected by the leaders who failed them. They were punished to cover incompetence. On his first day back in office, January 20, 2025, President Trump issued sweeping blanket pardons and commutations for nearly 1,600 patriotic Americans prosecuted for their presence at the Capitol. Many mere trespassers or peaceful protesters treated as insurrectionists by a weaponized Biden DOJ. He fully pardoned most, commuted sentences, and ordered immediate release of those still imprisoned, ending years of harsh solitary confinement, denied due process, and family separation for exercising their First Amendment rights, fully embracing the J6ers. Not only did they pardon them, but they're also fully embracing them and calling them patriotic Americans. Thousands of Americans paid the price for political failures they did not create. Since January 6, 2021, Nancy Pelosi spent over 3 years and nearly $20 million in taxpayer funds on her partisan select committee, producing a scripted TV spectacle to fabricate an insurrection narrative and pin all blame on President Trump. Video and audio recordings, including unaired HBO footage from her own daughter, show Nancy Pelosi repeatedly acknowledging responsibility for the catastrophic security failures, admitting, we have totally failed, and I take full responsibility for not having the National Guard pre-deployed despite intelligence warnings and President Trump's offers of troops that were ignored under her leadership as Speaker. This here, they quoted almost exactly from a Scott Adams tweet in this paragraph. The Democrats masterfully reversed reality after January 6th, branding peaceful patriotic protesters as insurrectionists and framing the event as a violent coup attempt orchestrated by Trump, despite no evidence of armed rebellion or intent to overthrow the government. In truth, it was the Democrats who staged the real insurrection by certifying a fraud-ridden election, ignoring widespread irregularities, and weaponizing federal agencies to hunt down dissenters, all while Pelosi's own security lapses invited the chaos they later exploited to seize and consolidate power. This gaslighting narrative allowed them to persecute innocent Americans, silence opposition, and distract from their own role in undermining democracy. They've got a video here of Nancy Pelosi saying, "I take responsibility." They give the timeline here. President Trump delivers powerful speech. Patriots march to the Capitol. Capitol Police response escalates tensions. President Trump urges calm. Leaked Pelosi video reveals security lapses. Ashley Babbitt murdered in cold blood. Mike Pence refuses to act. Stolen election certified. President Trump silenced. Mass arrests of patriotic protesters. January 6th Select Committee exposed. Weaponized prosecutions target President Trump. FBI entrapment operation exposed. Lawfare fails. President Trump prevails. President Trump corrected a historic wrong, freeing Americans who were unjustly punished and restoring fairness under the law. And then they've got a list of all the people who died that day, the patriots who died that day. The U.S. House Interim Report, as of December 17, 2024, the U.S. House Administration Subcommittee's interim report, released in December 2024 under Chairman Barry Loudermilk, exposes critical security failures on January 6, 2021 that were largely due to politicized decisions by Democratic leadership and the Pentagon. It details how Acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller dismissed President Trump's January 3 directive to deploy any necessary military assets, including the National Guard, to ensure safety during the demonstrations, viewing it as non-binding. Instead, restrictions were imposed over concerns about optics, leading to delays in the Guard's response despite urgent requests from Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund. The report also highlights Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy's intentional delays and deceptive communications to congressional leaders, as evidenced by recovered HBO footage which contributed to prolonged chaos at the Capitol, while exonerating Trump from claims of inciting or planning violence. The report strongly criticizes Nancy Pelosi's Select Committee for its partisan composition, bias, and ethical violations, including coaching witnesses like Cassidy Hutchinson, whose testimony was contradicted by multiple Secret Service agents and White House staff in recovered transcripts. These documents refute Hutchinson's fabricated claims about Trump, such as alleged assaults on agents or agreements with violent chants, and reveals Cheney's unethical direct communications with her, including assistance in changing lawyers to influence testimony. The Select Committee is accused of deleting over 1 terabyte of data, failing to archive interviews as required by House rules, and concealing footage where Pelosi admits responsibility for security lapses, such as not pre-deploying the National Guard despite intelligence warnings and Trump's offers. So there's more. It goes on quite a bit more. But this is their whole page for January 6th. One thing I was thinking about is that when it comes to actually, ideally they could just go through and just prosecute everyone and arrest all the bad guys and just sweep through and execute formal political power that way. And, ensure secure all the elections and everything. But it's not going to be possible to actually pull all of that off in a short time frame. So what they need to do is they need to win a major propaganda effort. They need to do those things in the background, but they know that those are going to move slowly. So they need to win a major propaganda war. Which is why I think you're seeing a lot of different people like, for example, Nick Shirley, who suddenly gets this story that goes uber massive viral. This is the role that the online right can play. We can volunteer for these roles. We don't need the administration to come give us a job. You could just volunteer for one. There's plenty of people who have done this. Like the Data Republican, Mike Benz, that whole orbit. This is the same concept. Start winning the narrative game and force the political the political environment to follow along behind it. And speaking of J6, Here's something that Kash Patel did. Most people don't know about this. Kash Patel formed a choir of J6 prisoners to sing the national anthem. And the result is a masterpiece. Shout out to Solianath for bringing this back up again. I'd completely forgotten about this. I remembered the book. There was a kid's book that that Kash Patel wrote that was something about like coming for the king or something to that effect. But I'd completely forgotten he also did this.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is our beer hall putsch. So true. So true, Niles Pritchard. This is just fucking propaganda. We know how to do propaganda when we want to. And here's just a fun little anecdote. Records show, this is from Paul Sperry, records show that U.S. Capitol Police Captain Michael Byrd, who fatally shot unarmed J6 protester Ashley Babbitt without warning, has been running an unaccredited daycare center with his wife Kaleska from their Maryland home since 2008. Maryland receives $190 million in HHS daycare funds. Yes, Slutty Milk, of fucking course he did. What are the fucking odds? Of course the guy has been running an unaccredited daycare center. There you go. Now, good thing we're getting a DOJ division dedicated specifically to investigating fraud. Every single one of you guys who has any sort of legal background, you need to go work for the fucking federal government. Do you know how many fucking lawyers they need? They need so many lawyers. Total lawyer takeover. There are so many freaking investigations to do. And fucking Thomas Massey already diverted hundreds of them. Absolutely and completely insane. And for my last trick tonight, I present to you, from Dr. Ben Braddock, America's greatest comedian, the funniest man alive, my president, a gentleman named Donald John Trump.
And she gets up and they put a little tiny thing like this, little thing. And my wife, by the way, my wife hates when I do this. She said, she's a very classy person, right? She said, it's so unpresidential I said, but I did become president.
So true.
She hates when I dance. I said, everybody wants me to dance. Darling, it's not presidential. She actually said, could you imagine FDR dancing? She said that to me. And I said, there's a long history that perhaps she doesn't know. Because he was an elegant fellow, even as a Democrat, right? He was the attack by Japan, he was quite elegant. But he wouldn't be doing this. But
she's in a fucking wheelchair.
Nor would too many others. But she says, darling, please, the weightlifting is terrible. And I have to say this, the dancing they really like. She said they don't like it, they're just being nice to you. I said, that's not right. The place goes crazy.
So true.
They're screaming, dance, please. But the weightlifting, but no, the girl gets up. And you see, I want to be more, but I have somebody watching. I want to be more effusive. I want to really, But she gets it. And, drops the thing, walks off the stage crying. Her mother's crying, her father's crying. Guy gets up. He said, have you lifted before? A little bit. And he walks up. Bing.
Bing.
He could have gone ding, 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 ding. I think it was 112 pounds, right? It's crazy.
My president, man. Just the funniest human being alive. Of course, everyone was identifying the, where was it? Where did he do it? I gotta find it. I thought was it up here? He kind of did it twice, didn't he? Yeah, there we go. Right there. He did the meme! He did the True Jack! Barron's been showing him the memes. Donald True Jack. Oh my God. Guys, we live in the best timeline. Nobody's got it better than us. Nobody has got it better than us. If you have been a loyal, trusting patriot, you are living the best life. My president loves his patriots. His moderate income patriots, especially. He knows that we love his dance. He's tapped into us. My president knows how to work an audience. He's plugged into his people. And he's also the most powerful man on earth. We don't deserve him. So true, Mr. Sue. We do not deserve him. God bless our president, a gentleman named Donald John Trump. Have you heard of him? Say a prayer for the man. And that's the Labe. That is it. Flew by. 3 hours. A nice, quick little 3-hour Labe. And here I promised you that I was just gonna go for it. It was gonna be long and it was gonna drag deep into the night, but I worked right through it. I'm proud of myself. Thank you guys for showing up and joining me for this. Reminder, at the beginning, for those of you who were here early on, I did the drawing for the free 1-year subscription to the King Pill Discord. I will be sending an email out here shortly to someone who has hope in their email address. I won't give more of a clue than that. I'm not going to dox anybody. But if you have hope in your email address and you entered the drawing, then you won. You'll be getting an email with a link to join. And anybody else who wants to join, you're welcome to go to kingpill.com, sign up, and I will be back tomorrow. For the Friday Labe, you know what that means. We get the Friday intro. And I'm guessing it's going to be a banger because I assume a lot more stuff is going to happen between now and then. And I have a whole bunch of stuff in the backlog that's also very good. So no matter what, we're going to have lots and lots of content for the Labe tomorrow. Please do support the show. Go to tips.kingpill.com. And I noticed that Justine was strangely absent here tonight. So fortunately, you guys, anytime you're listening to this, if you're listening to the podcast later on, you can go to tips.kingpill.com. You can send over a contribution to my streamer salary. And if I hit the goal this month, then it's going to be Patriot creating time, according to Mrs. Erickson. So you guys got to help me hit the goal. Tips.kingpilled.com. And yeah, follow me on Twitter at Kingpilled. Make sure you follow the Substack, substack.com/Kingpilled or Kingpilled on Substack. And I will be back tomorrow for another episode of The Labe. Until then, I leave you with Hulk.
When they took a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next president of the United States, enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America